number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Tuesday, the 6th of July. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, 22 degrees, a humidex of 29 under a mostly cloudy sky. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Breaking news this morning from the federal government, and the Prime Minister reportedly set to announce Canada's next Governor General. Multiple reports say the name of our new Governor General will be revealed during a news conference at the Canadian Museum of History at 10 o'clock this morning. Former Governor General Julie Payette resigned from her role in January amid claims that she created a toxic work environment for her staff. Our Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney will cover the announcement. Stay with City News for more on this developing story. To Florida now, where the remains of a Canadian have reportedly been recovered at the site of that collapsed condo building near Miami Beach. Our Alex Bloomfield joins us with the latest.
It's been 13 days now since the collapse, and the CBC has a statement from Global Affairs Canada this morning that has not yet been publicly released. It confirms that some remains recovered from Champlain Tower South have been identified as belonging to one of 4 missing Canadians. It's unclear if this is a new discovery or an identification of one of the 28 bodies already pulled from the site. CNN's Leila Santiago is in Surfside, has the latest on the search and rescue effort.
They are able to get access to a different part of the building after officials demolished what was still left standing last week. They've had to have some temporary pauses because of lightning, but the teams have been able to remove 4.8 million pounds of concrete from the pile.
4 bodies were found on Monday. The Global Affairs statement says 3 different Canadian families are affected by this tragedy. A total of 117 people remain unaccounted for, and there will be an update from Miami-Dade Police at 10 this morning. I'm Alex Bloomfield.
City News Time 9:02. The Prime Minister and Saskatchewan Premier will head to Cowessess First Nation this afternoon for a ceremony. The Cowessess chief says the signing ceremony will transfer control over children in care to the community. Cowessess is among several Indigenous groups that plan to handle their own child and family services as allowed under federal legislation. It's also the site of a former residential school where ground-penetrating radar recently detected a potential 751 unmarked graves. The Assembly of First Nations 42nd Annual General Assembly begins today, and outgoing National Chief Perry Bellegarde has signaled he will not seek re-election after 6 years in the role. 7 candidates are vying to replace Bellegarde as the next National Chief, including 3 women, a first for the AFN. Several ballots are expected before a winner will be declared tomorrow. Ontario's Education Minister says the province is considering incentives to boost vaccinations in the coming weeks. Stephen Lecce says the government's looking at new ways to promote vaccination. The province aims to offer 2 shots of the COVID vaccine to all eligible students before the start of the school year. All young people 12 years and older can now reschedule their second doses earlier. South of the border, Joe Biden refocusing his attention on vaccination efforts in the U.S. ABC's Karen Travers is in Washington.
President Biden meets with his COVID-19 response team today at the White House. After that, he'll deliver remarks on his administration's campaign to vaccinate Americans. The nation did not meet the president's goal of getting 70% of American adults partly vaccinated by July 4th, coming up short. About 67% of adults have received at least 1 shot. The president on Independence Day said getting vaccinated is the, quote, most patriotic thing you can do. Karen Travers, ABC News, Washington.
City News Time 9:03. Let's get a check on the forecast now, and here's weather specialist Denise Andriacci.
Mainly cloudy with sunny breaks today for Ottawa. The thunderstorm risk is this afternoon with showers and the risk for thunderstorms again this evening. A daytime high near 28 and that intense humidity, a humidex of 39. Showers for Wednesday near 17 degrees, cloudy with showers Thursday, and very cool, highs near 21. Your daytime high today, 28.
22 right now, feeling like 29 under a mostly cloudy sky. I'm Jason White. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Good, bad, or complicated.
There's no news in Ottawa and the Valley he won't talk about.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Habs win. Habs win. Hope they win again on Wednesday, because the next game would be Friday, and I would actually get to see the end of the game. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. What a day, what a day, what a day. Everywhere you look, there's news. Everywhere you look, there's news. And everywhere you look, there's opinion. And we love collecting opinion on the news. It's why we do the Rob Snow Show. Because when news happens, you usually have something to say about it. Locally here, big city committee meeting today. The Fedco Committee. This is the most powerful of all the city committees. All the chairs of all the other committees are on the Fedco Committee. It's like the cabinet of the city council. And if there's a local hot issue, gosh, it's pretty much on the agenda for this committee meeting. There's a report about fixing up Lansdowne Park. We have a great write-up on our website about that very story, the Lansdowne Park proposals. Check that out, ottawa.citynews.ca. There's also a report called Stage 2 LRT Procurement Lessons Learned. Procurement Lessons Learned. This report was written by the consulting group KPMG. Remember, despite all the problems that we had with the first phase of LRT, the same big players, just under a different name, not called RTG anymore, called something else, still managed to score a big slice of the work on Phase 2 of LRT, specifically the southern part of the Phase 2 build, despite having the lowest technical score. Okay? They won the business because they were the cheapest, by far the cheapest. So I guess when it comes to Phase 2 of our light rail grand plans going north-south, we'll have to wait and see if it's a case of getting what you paid for. And will the cheap man pay twice? The big thing on the agenda today is what's called budget direction. Budget direction, timeline, and consultation. Okay? This is the great annual budget charade that we have in this city, that residents are put through in this city every year. Especially when it comes to that last word, consultation. Oh, they do a lot of consultation. Whether they actually do a lot of listening, it's debatable. Up is the key word. Everything's going up, okay? Again. Property tax increase. Ottawa Police Services levy increase by no more than 3%. Some people think it should be 0. Transit levy to increase by no more than 4.5%. Garbage fee increase, user fee increase, up, and away. Please keep it as close to 3% as possible, if you please. That will be the direction from the mayor. And you, my trusty neighborhood taxpayer, you will have to be good for it. Meantime, the giveaways continue. You know, I've been keeping track of the money, not only that's coming into City Hall, but the money that goes out, okay, under this program called Brownfields. This is used to promote development. And like I said, there's a Brownfields grant. They're grants from the city to developers. There seems to be one at every meeting. And lo and behold, there's one at this meeting. Who would have guessed, David? Who would have guessed? For an address at 263 Greenway Avenue, which the city tells me is in Manor Park, which is it's a nice part of town, Manor Park. Okay. One of the oldest Dairy Queens in Ottawa is in Manor Park. So the development, the plan calls for a 6-story residential apartment building with 72 units and 1 level of underground parking. The construction value of the project, $23 million, would add $20 million in property taxes. And what is this for? A project that's about, 10 minutes away from Parliament Hill? But yet it still qualifies for a grant under the Brownfields program of $556,000. Grant, okay? Because, they never build it otherwise. Every week, it seems there's a grant like that. Eventually, it becomes real money. But anyway, in the news business, that's just the local stuff for today. The federal scene, as you just heard in our newscast, Gosh golly gee, it's on fire this morning. 10 o'clock this morning. Major announcement. Breaking news. Mr. Trudeau expected to name the next Governor General of Canada. Let's hope it works out better than the last pick. You may recall that one didn't go very well. I don't have a voicemail from the Prime Minister, so I know it's not me. But it's only going to add to the election speculation. The Governor General will be installed. Who knows? This one might actually want to live at Rideau Hall. And the Prime Minister can soon leave Rideau Cottage, walk across the grounds, visit her or his most regalness, and say, Your Majesty, this Parliament is a mess. I can't work with these people anymore. With your most crowned blessing, I believe we should have an election. And Canadians can decide sometime in September or October on who should govern them, and the good money is on me winning a massive majority government. And with that, we'll be on our way and we'll have an election. There is nothing in the latest poll from Abacus Data that would suggest any other outcome than a Liberal majority. David Coletto, Abacus Data, has the Liberals in the latest poll, released this morning, up by 12 points over Aaron O'Toole and the Conservatives. Liberals at 37. No love for the Conservatives in this poll, sinking to 25%. That's about as low as they've been recently. And when the NDP's at 20, by the way. When it comes to what Abacus calls accessible voters, those are Canadians who might be convinced during the course of an election campaign to change their vote. The Liberal lead only widens to 14 points. Yep, the numbers only get better. My gosh. This race, seriously, it looks like it's over before it even begins. It has the Liberals up by 14 points in Ontario. The Liberals are up by 8 points over the Bloc in Quebec and up by 20 points over the Conservatives in Quebec. The Conservatives have dropped like a stone in British Columbia. That province used to be a three-way race. Now it's a two-way race between the Liberals and the New Democrats. The Conservatives are behind by 13 points in British Columbia. And they're behind by, just 23 points in Atlantic Canada. The Conservatives are behind the Liberals, according to this poll, among men, among women, and among all adults. Let's see here. All adults in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. Yeah, it could be ugly on election night. For the team in blue, maybe even historic for this version of the Conservative Party of Canada. So, yeah, a new GG, a new poll, and an old election promise. That is in the mix today, too. HFR. High Frequency Rail. What the HFR? High Frequency Rail. This is so big for the Liberals. This announcement today about the fabled Quebec City to Toronto rail corridor. This is such a big announcement for the Liberals today. It takes 3 Liberal cabinet ministers to make the announcement, and they have to do it at 2 different times of the day in 2 different cities. That's how big it is. High frequency rail, not high speed rail. High frequency rail. I'm not thinking, and I don't think you should be either, Japanese bullet trains or Chinese bullet trains. Maybe via locomotives that choo-choo a little faster. Because they're apparently going to be on a dedicated rail line. They wouldn't have to share the line with freight. If it actually ever comes to pass. Because this is one of these pre-election goodies. They go to the filing cabinet. What haven't we promised in the last 5 years? High frequency rail. Yeah, let's pitch that again. Quebec City to Toronto corridor. With a stop in Ottawa along the way. They haven't forgotten about us. Now, the number in the news media that is being cited this morning is $490 million over 6 years. Now, you think about that, $490 million over 6 years. I don't think that gets you a lot of any kind of rail. I mean, here in Ottawa, you think about it, okay? We're building this spur line to the airport, okay? From South Keys to the airport. It's 4 kilometers. And it costs $150 million, right, for 4 kilometers. What's a dedicated rail line going to cost between Quebec City and Toronto? $490 million? I would say give your head a shake. Anyway, we can get into all of the news of the day, the issues of the hour, the current events of our time during our Talkback Hour coming up between 10 and 11 o'clock. Calls and opinions during the hottest hour of talk radio in town at 750-1310. Have an opinion. We're listening on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
I always knew I was going to own my own business, and I've always wanted to have a store. And I sort of figured when the right concept came together at the right time, I would move forward with that plan. And so through doing some environmental initiatives in the restaurant group that I was with prior to opening this store, it just triggered my path towards being more environmentally conscientious and wanting to make more of a difference, and hopefully encouraging, inspiring other people to want to do the same, at which point the idea for All Eco was born. I have some really fun products. I have a really wide spectrum of products. So the things we look for in terms of qualifying products are sustainably made, upcycled, recycled, zero waste, all natural, no harmful chemicals to like the environment or to our bodies. We have like fun stuff, so like really clean burning candles, lots of really natural body care and skin care. I put a real emphasis on Canadian products. I really try to support up and comers, and I always source Canada first. The refill bar is really important to me. It's really huge. I think that's been exciting as well, because I thought it was going to be a real process in convincing people that this is a better way to go. And actually it was just like right away there was a built-in affinity towards doing refill, which has been great. We closed, I think, probably we were closed down by before the second week of March. Just didn't feel we could comfortably or confidently stay open, even though I do sell essential products, like in terms of the cleaning. But we just didn't feel we could make a safe space for ourselves or our customers at that time, and especially with the information we had at the time. So we did close our doors, at which point I did not have a website, because that was I hadn't even scheduled myself to have a website at that point. So that was sort of like full speed moving towards that and trying to drive the business at the same time, still get myself on the map because I was so new. So during that time, as we were building the website, we were still doing a lot of video shopping and private shopping, online shopping, like online phone, text. Any way I could do business, I was doing it. And there was really a nice show of support for my business during that time, which was really, really encouraging. And now, we are fully set up online too.
FM and 1310 AM.
Election speculation is in the air. 10 o'clock announcement. New Governor General will be announced by Prime Minister Trudeau. We'll have that for you here on City News. And one of the ridings to watch on election night will be Ottawa Centre. We learned recently that Catherine McKenna, the Liberal MP and Cabinet Minister, will not seek re-election. Joining me now is someone who hopes to be the NDP candidate running for the nomination for the New Democrats is Angella MacEwan, and she joins me this morning on City News. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's nice to hear from you. Why are you running?
That's a great question. I'm running because I think that people are really disappointed with the Liberals. They're disappointed with the promises that they haven't followed through on. So they promised a lot, right? Both the first time they were elected in 2015 and then again in 2019. And people said, in 2019, I think they thought, we'll give them another chance. We'll give them some extra time. But there's just so many files, from climate action to actually following through on the promises that they've made for clean water, for Indigenous schools, to tax fairness and putting people before corporations. And so I have a fair amount of experience working on these issues as an economist for trade unions. And I recently wrote a book. I spent the winter writing a book called Share the Wealth with my friend Jonathan Govan, about how unequal wealth and income inequality is in Canada and what the consequences are. The federal government's cut taxes significantly over the past 20 years, and that's reduced their capacity to actually invest in things that we need, like affordable housing, like childcare, like pharmacare. And so I think that this is a great opportunity. The NDP has shown over the pandemic that when you have more NDP members of parliament fighting for people, that we're able to get stuff done and we're able to hold the government to account. And so I think it's a great opportunity here in Ottawa Centre to get another NDP member of parliament elected, fighting for people and what they need.
Okay, let me ask you this, because, and it's all just speculation now, okay? Who knows? Maybe an election is averted, but I don't think anybody really thinks that's going to be the case. But when Catherine McKenna announced that she wasn't seeking re-election, it's like her seat wasn't even cold yet, and people already started speculating, well, maybe Mark Carney will run for the Liberals in Ottawa Centre. What would you think? Like, Mark Carney used to be the governor of the Bank of Canada, used to be the governor of the Bank of England. I mean, like, serious economic chops, right? So what would you think if somebody like that ran for the Liberals in Ottawa Centre?
I mean, I think that would be amazing, an amazing opportunity for the NDP. Mark Carney.
For the NDP, an amazing opportunity for the NDP. Okay, why do you say that?
Because Mark Carney is the symbol of liberal thinking, of the liberal way of doing things. That you can use these words, these values, say these pretty words, but still favor banks, still favor corporations, still go with private finance as a solution. So the market will solve all of our problems, right? And that's simply not true. We know that now. Lots of people are now on board. It's been definitively proven that trickle down doesn't work. All it does is increase inequality and increase wealth inequality. And so Mark Carney is kind of the symbol of this dying economic thought. And so it would be, I think, a fantastic opportunity for us to put up our bold, people-driven alternative against that.
Okay, on climate, which was certainly it was front and center for the last 8 years, I guess, in Ottawa Centre, because the MP was the environment minister. Where do you think they've fallen short there when it comes to climate change and the environment?
Well,
because it's a big thing for them. It's part of their brand, right? So
for sure. But isn't it interesting that one of the things Catherine McKenna said she was stepping down to do was to make a bigger difference in terms of the environment. So you have a cabinet minister that thinks she can do better work outside of government than within her own party. So I think that's a pretty damning indictment of how she thinks the Liberals have acted on climate change. I mean, look, they invested in buying a pipeline instead of investing in a new infrastructure that would help us transition away from oil and gas. They promised us a Just Transition Act in 2019. We still don't have it. They've said largely the right types of things, but they've not put the money in place to do it. We heard yesterday, now 6 years after they've been in government, they're talking about high frequency rail, like actually getting a dedicated
high frequency rail. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, because I mean, anybody who's taken the train between Ottawa and Toronto knows that often you're late because you're stuck behind freight trains. And the issue was quite simple. They just needed a dedicated track. Via actually didn't.
Well, they say they're going to do that. They're going to announce that today.
6 years later now, they're announcing that basic first step, right? And so it's just taken them a really long time. And literally BC's on fire right now, right? Like, we need to be moving faster and more urgently. We also need to be putting public money in rather than trusting the private sector to solve this crisis for us. Incentives they do this with housing. They offer incentives for developers. They offer incentives for clean energy. They offer incentives for oil and gas to transition. So they're actually providing more subsidies for oil and gas with the hopes that they'll be less bad. They still haven't put in green building codes, right? We know what we need to put in for building codes in order to make sure that new buildings that are built meet the requirements. They haven't done retrofits of publicly owned or managed buildings. Like, they haven't retrofitted their own buildings. They've slowly started, buying more green buses, that type of thing. But it's just not with the urgency that we need to do. And I think they put too much energy on the carbon tax.
Right.
And that was their fight. And it wasn't a fight. The carbon tax isn't set at a level right now where it's even effective, right? Like, it's not changing.
You think it should be higher?
Yet. It needs to be higher. Economists agree it needs to be higher in order to actually.
Well, they say they're going to increase it to $170 a ton.
Yeah, I mean, they say a lot of things.
Okay, all right. It says here you're a senior economist with CUPE right now. Is that right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, what should happen to, first it was CERB and then it was CRB, and it's supposed to be phased out by the end of the year. September, no more CERB. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're still in a situation where we don't know what's going to be happening with the Delta variant. We have people who've been out of work for a year. I think they need to do, I think they need to continue with making employment insurance more accessible for folks and continue support for people that haven't had work, whether that means retraining. If everybody's vaccinated by September, and we can have people back in retraining and back at work, and the labor market is recovering, that's great. But we don't know that that's going to be the case. And we think that for a lot of the folks, so I am a labor economist and I do follow, the job numbers pretty closely.
Sure. Yeah.
That for a lot of the folks who've been unemployed for a year, they're not going to jump back right away, right? And some of the jobs that we lost aren't ever going to come back. So people will need support to do retraining to find new jobs and new opportunities, because there are new jobs that will be coming.
We're a little tight on time. So when will the New Democrats pick their candidate for Ottawa Centre?
July 17th.
Oh, July 17th coming up. Okay. Yeah. All right. Good luck.
Okay,
thank you for your time this morning. Angela MacEwan is seeking the nomination for the New Democrats to be the candidate in what is widely expected to be an election coming soon. Maybe sooner rather than later, the way things are shaping up here. 9:28, Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, right after the news on City News.
For local news in Ottawa and the Valley, this is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Tuesday, the 6th of July. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, cloudy, 22 degrees, feeling like 30 with the humidity. Here's what's making news this hour. Breaking news from the federal government and an announcement coming shortly about our next Governor General. The Prime Minister has a news conference scheduled for 10 o'clock this morning at the Canadian Museum of History in Gatineau. Stay with City News for the latest on this developing story. The body of a Canadian has been pulled from the rubble of that collapsed condo building in Florida. 3 more Canadian citizens remain unaccounted for. It's not clear if the Canadian identified is a new discovery or one of the 28 bodies already pulled from the site since the building collapsed 13 days ago. Ottawa police releasing photos of 2 men they want to talk with in Sunday night's murder in Lowertown. Photos of both persons of interest are at ottawa.citynews.ca. If you recognize them, you're asked to contact police or Crime Stoppers. Debate begins this morning on next year's Ottawa city budget. Looks like you're in for an average tax bill increase of $119. But despite calls for the opposite, the spending plan would increase police spending by up to 3%. City News Time 9:32. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Well, we usually catch Professor Ian Lee in his Glee bunker, but he's on the road today. Where are you? Cardinal, is that right?
I'm in Cardinal.
Yeah, nice part of Eastern Ontario.
On the mighty Saint Laurent. That's right. It's part of the glorious Eastern Ontario, where the good people live.
Very good.
I grew up.
Very good, very good. I'm glad you're getting out.
Yep,
yes.
Out there kayaking. I got to build up my energy to take on the new government, the Liberal government, if they try and pass Bill C-10 to censor people like me.
Oh, yes, okay. All right, well, we'll see what happens with that. Now,
yes.
Gosh, lots of election goodies being announced day after day. And another big one today, Professor. Now, stop me if you've heard this one before. The federal government will build... Well, it's high-frequency rail, not necessarily high-speed rail, for the fabled Quebec City to Toronto rail corridor. Dedicated rail line for Via Rail. What do you think?
I really do think it's delusional, and let me explain why. And I've looked at many of these studies over the years because I've been fascinated by it. It's been proposed literally going back, if I'm not mistaken, to Pierre Trudeau back in the 70s. I think they proposed it at one point. And so there's been quite a few studies, and they tend to be what I call hype studies, where you're propaganda, where you're going rah, 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 rah studies. And I mean by that they all talk about, look at this, and they'll save 25%, and, it's rah, 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 it's wonderful, wonderful. And I haven't found a study, I'm sure there's one out there buried somewhere, that actually does a compare and contrast to air travel, be from Quebec City or Montreal to Toronto, versus train, and also the time distance. So I did some just using public data. And then I also looked at the cost. The only other North American equivalent is the proposed high-speed link between LA and San Francisco. And they've costed that out now today at $80 billion US dollars, which is over 100 billion Canadian dollars.
80 billion US dollars.
Yeah, and that link, by the way, I MapQuested it. The distance from LA to San Francisco is 600 kilometers when you convert it into from miles to kilometers.
Right.
Quebec City to Toronto is 800 kilometers, so it's significantly longer. So then I looked at the time, and right now, according to Via Rail, the fastest train you can take in normal times is 9 hours from Quebec City to Toronto.
Wow.
So I said, okay, what if I take Porter? Well, it's 90 minutes. Downtown to downtown, right?
Yeah.
And so then I went and looked at the volumes Okay, so studies have said, this is on Transport Canada's website,
Okay.
they could take as many as 2 million passengers from air travel and put them on the train if there was a high-speed train, and that's by 2036. In other words, they had to push their forecast out to 2036 to hit 2 million passengers. So I went and looked up pre-COVID 2019 and said, well, how many people were flying planes in 2019? 170 million. Now, that's to all the cities in Canada, but as you know, Toronto and Montreal are the two biggest cities.
Yeah.
And so I know there's a bit of mixing and matching there, but where I'm going here is when you look at travel in Canada, and the States, by the way, forget Europe. I'll tell you why to forget Europe in a moment.
Okay.
We have much lower densities. Canada is the lowest density in the world. We're the second largest country in the world after Russia, 4 people per square kilometer. And so when you look at travel, short haul, which is less than 400, statisticians say it's less than 400 kilometers, it's overwhelmingly cars. I can't remember the number. I think it's 90 or 95% of all trips less than 400 kilometers is by automobile. But the moment you go medium and long haul in Canada, we go onto planes, not trains, because we're such a vast country. And all you have to do is look at the volume of air passenger travel between Toronto and Ottawa, or Toronto and Montreal, Toronto and Quebec City, to see those numbers. Okay? So when you finish crunching these numbers, you're saying, well, wait a minute, this is going to cost somewhere around $100 billion if you use American data. And I don't think it's unfair. People say, well, it's high density in LA and San Francisco. Well, it's high density in Toronto, Montreal. In other words, the land values to expropriate are equally expensive there. So you've got similar situation, and the trip is 200 kilometers longer. So I think it's not unfair to use roughly ballpark $100 billion to build a high-speed rail or quasi-high-speed rail from Quebec City to Toronto. And right now, okay, again, I couldn't get I couldn't find them quickly, the 2019 numbers, but for 2020, there was less than 1 million people traveled by train that was 2020 data, from Quebec City to Toronto. So where I'm going with this is here's my big picture takeaway.
Okay.
There's a very small number of people who will travel, whether it's high speed, low speed, in between speed, because it takes a long time, and you can fly very cheaply on Porter or Air Canada, and it's 90 minutes. And now they have a high speed, and I've taken it from the airport at Pearson into downtown Toronto.
Well, I wouldn't call it high speed. I've been on that. I wouldn't call it high speed.
I can get downtown way faster, I think, than a taxi. And most people take the taxi, and so
I mean, you're not stuck in traffic. I wouldn't. It's not a bullet train or anything.
My point is, some people are saying, "Well, you're not counting the time to get out to the airport." Well, you're not counting the time to get out to the railroad station either in those times. So, but let's acknowledge you have to get out to the airport sooner because it takes longer to board and all that. Sure, but then you arrive at the other end, you get off, and you jump on that. I call it a fairly high-speed dedicated line that takes you right downtown. Yeah. And I've flown into Toronto many times. That's Porter.
Whatever, the Union Pearson Express, right? Union Pearson Express. That's what you're talking about.
And so my point is, we're talking roughly $100 billion for what? A couple of million passengers? It just doesn't make sense. The ROI, the return on investment in people. So for those who say it's not about money, yes, it is, because people pay the taxes. Yeah. And $100 billion is an awful lot of money for a very small return on the investment. People are going to continue to fly in this country because we're such a huge country, spanning 25% roughly of the northern hemisphere and 7 time zones, and that's just the reality of our country. You want to get quickly to Halifax because your mother is ailing, you're going to take a plane. You're not going to take the train. You're not going to drive there either, by the way. Right. You want to get out if I want to get up to Thunder Bay to see my brother, I'm going to fly because I can get up there in 90 minutes.
Yeah, I guess this is what I want to know. Let's say this train, because there is a stop in Ottawa, okay? Yeah. And then there's a stop in Smiths Falls, and there's a stop in Kingston. Yeah. If people want to go to Toronto, or other than price, what would be their motivation? To take the train instead of take a plane or drive themselves.
I haven't seen I was trying to get the stats and didn't have time. Right. But I would my theory or hypothesis, if you want to get fancy, is the majority of the trips intercity, not intra-city within the city. That's mostly us going to work and going to the grocery store, okay? But between cities, the average Ottawan or Torontonian does not jump up and fly or train or drive to Toronto one day a week. You go to Toronto on business or government business. When I say business, including governments and associations that have business in the Toronto and Ottawa.
Yes.
And I've flown many times in the last 30 years, and I get on that plane and they're all wearing suits. They're not tourists.
No.
Tourists don't wear suits. Let's be very clear, everybody. Tourists don't wear suits. And I get on that plane at 8 o'clock going from Ottawa to Toronto when I've had to fly to Toronto to give a paper or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're all suits.
Yes.
Okay, that's government business and business and lobbyists and so on and so forth.
Sure.
And my point is, to them, time is money.
Yeah.
And if they're going to go there, they're going to.
What about if you? What if it's more comfortable? What if it's more comfortable to be on the train? That's one of the selling points of the train. It's more comfortable.
Then you're talking the tourist market, okay? Or let's call, when I say the tourist market, the non-business market, the non-time essential market.
Yeah.
And there's just not that many people going. Quebec City is a small city. It's smaller than Ottawa, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
So we're really talking, they're doing that for political reasons, okay? The market in Quebec City is very small. So we're really talking a Montreal to Toronto, because Montreal is a big city. It is the third largest city in Canada after Toronto and Vancouver. And they want Ottawa because the politicians are here and they like the idea of being able to work on the train and with internet and so forth. So this is really a benefit for a small number of elites, political elites, and the environmental activists who have this delusional dream, and it is delusional, that in Canada, and they believe it in City Hall, where they say 50% of all trips out the front door will be by mass transit, bike, or foot by 2030. They just simply refuse to confront the reality that intra-city, 80% of the trips are across the burbs. They're not, from the hub, the spoke into the downtown hub and spoke. They're across the burbs, from going from your house to the grocery store, taking your kids to soccer, etc. And if you talk intercity, it's mostly business travel, and they want speed because they got to get down there fast, and they have a meeting, and they don't want to take 7 hours.
They want to get there and back in the same day.
Jump back down in the same day. So this, and they keep saying, well, Europe does it, and they refuse.
All right, yeah, you said you were going to say, the European experience.
Out, okay?
All right.
Europe has over 500 million people in a parcel of land that you can dump into southern and eastern Ontario. I can drive from the bottom of Germany, I did it, to the top of Germany in 8.5 hours. I've done it. You can drive from the bottom, if you get on the freeways, the motorways. I can drive from the bottom of England to the Scottish border in less than a day. I mean, these are small little postage stamp countries with very large populations and densities running 250 to 550 people per square kilometer. So yes, Europe can do it. Yes, Netherlands can do it, and France and Germany, because they have huge populations relative to Canada. We've got 38 million in the entire country, but take out Western Canada, because this is only Quebec City to Toronto, and then you're down to about 2/3 of the 38 million. And so I just don't think it makes sense. The reality is, if you're going to go medium haul, long haul, you're going to take the plane. And the numbers show it.
There's also this other kind of nagging question I wanted you to get your take on it. The government doesn't own an airline anymore. The government, well, I guess now the government owns part of an airline. But nevertheless, the government got out of the airline business. And, the government doesn't run a bus line.
That's right.
Does the government really need to run a rail line, passenger rail anymore?
No, the reason they're doing it is because the market won't support it. And for those who say, well, the market isn't everything, remember, that's code talk for those people who are really attacking all of us. Us. We are the market. The market in anything is us. The car market are the people that buy cars. The housing market are the people that buy houses. So when people talk pejoratively, oh, the market, that bad market, they're talking about all the people that participate in that market. There's a market for chocolate bars. There's a market for laptop computers. And they're us. People buy products. Rocks and plants and trees don't buy anything. They don't have a cash flow, and they don't have a bank account, and they don't have a credit card. It's human beings that buy stuff, and so all these markets are us. And so we collectively have turned our back on train travel. Now, you could say it's a chicken and egg, as the environmentalist activists do. They say that's because the train travel is so poor and it's so slow. And yet, people can drive medium distances in a very comfortable vehicle called their car, and the stats show that when the trip goes over 400, most trips switch. It tips to airfare, to airplanes.
Right.
And, when I go to Vancouver, I just don't drive there. It would be insane. It would take 8 days, 7 days, 6 days. I can fly to Vancouver in 4 hours if I have to, or if I have to go to Calgary. And so if you're over 400 or 500 kilometers, and you should see the stats, and by the way, they are there to anybody to look at, from Transport Canada for Canada, and in the States, it's the Bureau of Transportation Statistics. And they've got it broken down by age cohort, by income, and they've got it broken down by gender and ethnicity. And nobody can say, oh, it's just rich people that fly. It's just nonsense.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, we'll find out that announcement a little later. Governor General at 10 o'clock. They're going to name a new Governor General at 10 o'clock. I don't know if you heard that news yet.
I did. I just heard that it's going to be someone from Western Canada, and I think it probably will be an Indigenous person.
Oh, okay.
And then the question will be, will they be bilingual? Because Trudeau has said repeatedly they will not bend on the requirement for bilingualism, understandably so. So it's going to, if it is an Indigenous person.
But it's not you.
Not me.
Not you.
No.
Okay. All right. Maybe next time. We'll be right back with Professor Ian Lee, Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, here on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
An old-fashioned traditional grocery store. You're going to find a butcher, okay? You want a steak cut a certain way, you're going to get it. There's flour piled in the warehouse. There's mixers on the floor. There's flour on the floor. The bakery's rented out to Frank Nicolo. It's him and his son come in at night. They mix the dough, they roll the dough, and they bake the dough. It's not the traditional frozen and thaw and put it in the bin, okay? It's made from scratch 7 days a week. It's probably the only bakery left in Ottawa that does that. Then customer service. We're big on that. The cashiers, the deli. You're not. If you ask for something, they're not going to point. It's an aisle number 7. They're going to bring you there. Okay. If you have too much groceries out, we'll take it out to your car. You know what I mean? There's nothing we don't do for our customers, and we evolved around our customers. They would come in and say, can you try getting me this? Can you get me this? So that's how we built the lineup we have now. Okay. So we have a lot of unique items that someone that came over to live in Canada hasn't seen this particular product, but we sourced it and we have it for them, that like something they used to have as a kid. We have a lot of those unique items, a lot, from like all over the world, and we source it through distributors in Montreal and Toronto that bring in the product in bulk, and we piggyback off of them. Probably the largest European deli in Ottawa. We sell lots because people buy lots. It's nothing really complicated about that. We turn over a lot of product. We package it properly. We buy, and we're always consistent. You're always going to find, Cuddy turkey breast, Saint Daniel mortadella. You're always going to get the same brands. We don't flip back and forth to save 20 cents. It's always the same brands the last 29 years. Best sandwiches in town. It's simple. It starts off with fresh bread every day baked in the store. Anything that's left over goes to breadcrumbs. So you're getting a fresh bun every day that was baked probably 4 hours before you get here, okay? Not only baked, made, like, mix the flour, roll the dough, proof the bread, and bake the bread, okay? Then all the ingredients come right off the shelves. Your lettuce, your tomatoes, all your condiments, and they're cut up fresh in the deli. Not like the big, corporate restaurant chains that your lettuce comes in shredded in a bag, you open it up and you throw it in the bin. Takes, 2 or 3 days to get here from California. How long is it in the bag? The big difference is like making a sandwich at home, and you don't have to do the work. It's really what the trick is, and using the freshest ingredients possible.
United Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Omar Alghabra is the transport minister. He's doing the first of what will be actually 2 announcements on this HFR rail, high-frequency rail announcement, doing that right now in Quebec City. We have one feed of it here, I think.
Passenger rail. is a cleaner travel option, and our government remains committed to supporting the creation of a high-frequency rail between Toronto and Quebec City. This commitment is reflected in the almost $500 million announced in Budget 2021 to advance the HFR reality. We want more reliable and cleaner travel options for Canadians, and we want it to be done right. Je vais maintenant céder la parole à mon collègue Jean-Yves. Merci.
Okay. Yeah, this is a big deal. There's something afoot here because there's 3 cabinet ministers there. Professor Ian Lee is with us from Carleton University. He's with us every Tuesday morning. They say it might have nothing more to do than just a re-announcement of a re-announcement because there's going to be a really close election race in Trois-Rivières, Quebec, and under this plan there would be a new station in Trois-Rivières. It may be just nothing more than riding politics.
I think so, and that's why they never talk in these announcements. And it's been discussed, literally going back 40 years into the 70s. I'm not saying that politicians did, although I think they did. But the larger point is they always talk about, we're going to have studies to look into this because the numbers don't make sense both on the supply, on the cost side, and on the demand side for the service. We're talking something that will run, people can quibble, but it's going to, if the American link from LA to San Francisco, which is 200 kilometers shorter in distance, is going to cost $80 billion US, you can bet that high-speed link from Quebec City to Montreal and up to Ottawa will run 80 to 100 billion Canadian.
Okay, let me ask you this. I'm going to actually have the chief economist from the Bank of Montreal is going to be on our program a little later.
Yep.
Doug Porter is his name.
Smart man.
And he has a new report out this week. It's called The Wall of Wealth. We have built what he calls an astonishing wall of wealth during the pandemic of $2 trillion. And it says, I'm quoting here, the average household now has more than $1 million in total assets and is nearly there even after netting out debt.
Yeah.
Holy smokes, Professor, are we all millionaires now in Canada? If I'm not a millionaire, should I feel bad?
Getting close to that. And for those who say, oh, that's not everybody, it's just affecting...
Average.
I know that I'm sure there'll be politicians from the Liberal Party saying that, and I'm not picking on them. That they're in power. They're the government. So I'm going to criticize them. If they look at the StatsCan report that just came out, they're showing that disposable income for the lowest income households increased more than any other household. And if you look at the wealth, the bottom quintile, that's the poorest number of people in Canada, the bottom 20%, their wealth went up more than the highest income. And the third most important thing that came out of this was the famous gap between the top and the bottom, which Justin Trudeau has told us dozens and dozens of times is expanding, accelerating, exploding. So has the Minister of Finance. It actually went down. The gap between the top and the bottom contracted. It shrunk. And Jagmeet Singh, so I'm not being partisan here, he also has talked about the skyrocketing inequality. Yes. It is not. I just wish somebody would whisper in their ears, their aides, and say, don't say that because you're going to look foolish because you're so wrong, Ms. Freeland. They're statistically wrong. I'm not saying that there's no inequality. I'm saying that the gap is not widening. It's not expanding. It's not skyrocketing. And yet they continue and persist in misleading Canadians on this. And this, for people who don't agree with me or don't think I'm making it up, go Google Stats Canada Household Economic Well-Being during the COVID-19 pandemic. And you will find it right there in plain English, including some lovely graphs showing the people at the bottom were doing better than the people at the top during COVID.
Okay. So you are saying, I'm trying to understand if because he also says the surge in home prices has played the single biggest role in boosting household balance sheets.
Yes.
Surge in home prices, okay?
Yes.
So home prices can be volatile, right? Home prices. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And I know here's where statistics. You can play games with stats, and I realize that. Are we talking national averages? Are we talking regional averages? Are we talking local averages?
Yeah.
Yes, Some real estate brokers are screaming at their radio saying, don't you understand all real estate's local? Yes, of course I do.
Okay.
But they're also part of a larger economy.
Right.
So we're not talking about Ottawa prices and comparing them to Somalia home prices. We're comparing them to other cities in Canada, even if there are variations from city to city. Okay, that's the first point. The second point is that 70% of Canadians, because one of the things that gets thrown back in my face all the time is, okay, that's fine for the homeowners, but what about the ordinary
What about
folks?
everybody else? What if you don't own a home?
70% of all Canadians own a home.
Yeah, well, still, that's 30% that don't. I mean, you're still talking about, 10, 12 million people, 12 million people, probably.
Listen, I'm not trying to trivialize it. Yeah. We don't have 100% home ownership.
Yeah.
Our country, Canada, has one of the highest rates of home ownership on the planet Earth.
Yeah, but if you don't own a home and it's home prices that has played the single biggest role in turning everyone into essentially the average household has been turned into a millionaire.
Correct.
Okay,
that's correct.
But that means if you're not a homeowner, you're like way behind.
So Rob, what we're really talking about in code, I guess, or in roundabout way, is the bottom quintile and a half. The bottom 20%, and I'm not saying that nobody in the bottom quintile doesn't own a home, but we're talking basically, approximately, the people that don't own homes are, surely by a wealth effect measurement, they're the poorest. That's what we're exactly talking about. Yeah. So we're saying, okay, low-income people and poor people don't own houses. Okay, yes, that's true. That was true 40 years ago, in the 70s, 50 years ago, when I was in the Bank of Montreal as a mortgage manager. I mean, these are realities. I'm not saying it's a good reality. I'm not celebrating it. I'm just saying we don't have 100% home ownership. We've never had, no country in the world has ever had 100% home ownership that I'm aware of when I look at the OECD statistics on this. Yeah. There are good stats on this. So we are on one of the highest levels, which raises wealth for most Canadians, but not all Canadians. So you're correct. But we're doing very well as a nation in terms, in other words, remember Mr. Trudeau in 2015 talked about the collapse of the middle class. That was bogus. It was absolutely, statistically, factually false when he said that in 2015. Professor Stephen Gordon of Laval published numerous op-eds debunking that urban legend, and it's more false today. The middle class did not collapse. The middle class has seen its income go up year after year after year after year. It's also seen its net worth go up year after year. Yes, principally because of home ownership, because home ownership is, if I'm not mistaken, it's about 2/3 or 3/4 of the total wealth of the average Canadian. So most of their wealth, no surprise, it's always been like that. The greatest single source of wealth for most ordinary people is their home. And they've gone up in value. So and for those who say, what about the young people? How are they going to ever buy a house? Well, those 70% are going to pass it on, because you can't take your wealth with you when you die, to be really crass and blunt. When you die, and your estate is passed on to whoever you give it to. And according to BMO's pension group, they did a study a year ago of all people over, I think it was 65 years of age, and said, what are your plans for your estate? And some staggering number, like 90 or 95%, said, guess what? I'm going to leave it to my kids. So when people get all their knickers in a knot about the millennials and the young people, well, they're going to get this money. And there's about a $1.5 trillion. And that was pre-COVID, was the wealth transfer that's anticipated. And if you again say, well, what about those whose parents don't own a house? Well, that's the people I've already said, acknowledged, are in the bottom quintile and a bit. They're the poorest people in society. I'm not saying we should ignore them. We have a plethora of programs to support them. COVID programs, and pre-COVID. I mean, we were already pre-COVID, because I looked up the data, transferring over 25% of GDP in income redistribution in Canada. So this nonsense that COVID showed all these huge, enormous holes in our safety net is just, again, bogus. Completely bogus, and we saw it in the savings rate skyrocketing. Ben Tell at CIBC now estimates the savings isn't $100 billion in bank accounts in Canada. It's not $200 billion. He estimates it's $230 billion is sitting in bank accounts. Well, if we were all starving to death, or large numbers of us were starving to death, we'd be rushing off to the grocery store with our savings to buy food.
We gotta go. We'll talk to you next week. Enjoy your stay in Cardinal.
Okay.
Be careful in that kayak.
Okay.
Talk to you soon. Professor Ian Lee, Sprott School of Business, Carleton University. This is City News.
One for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Tuesday, the 6th of July. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now, a cloudy sky, 24 degrees in Ottawa, the humid X 31, Smiths Falls 22, feeling like 30. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Happening now. At the Museum of History in Gatineau, the Prime Minister is getting ready to announce Canada's next Governor General. Our Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney joins us with more.
The Prime Minister is about to hold a news conference at the Museum of History across the river from Parliament Hill. That's where he will reportedly name Canada's next Governor General, although no hints at this time on who may get the vice-regal position. Former Governor General Julie Payette resigned from her post back in January after a scathing review of workplace harassment allegations. Since then, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court has been filling in. The choice of a Governor General tends to be one that's not political, that the public can see as an impartial vice-regal, since at times they have to make choices such as which party is given the option to govern and whether or not to prorogue Parliament or drop the writ for an election. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News Time 10:03. After the Governor General announcement, the Prime Minister will head to Saskatchewan this afternoon, meeting that province's premier for a signing ceremony on the Cowessess First Nation. The community's chief says the ceremony is part of a transfer of control over children in care to the community. Cowessess is also the site of a former residential school where ground-penetrating radar has detected a potential 751 unmarked graves. Global Affairs Canada confirming the remains of a Canadian have been found in the rubble of a collapsed 12-story condo building in southern Florida. The death toll from that building collapse is now at 28. 3 other Canadians are among the 117 people listed as still missing. Global Affairs says it sends its condolences to the family and friends who've lost loved ones in the building collapse and notes that 3 different families in our country have been affected by the tragedy. Tropical storm Elsa continues to churn its way toward the U.S. U.S. National Hurricane Center says it's possible, but unlikely that Elsa will have strengthened to a hurricane by the time it makes landfall in Florida.
We're not forecasting it to be a hurricane, but we did issue a hurricane watch just to illustrate the possibility that it could get to a hurricane. And again, that watch area kind of covers the Tampa Bay area, a little to the south and a little to the north of it.
At last check, the storm's core was about 80 kilometers south of Key West, Florida, 434 kilometers south of Tampa. Let's Let's get a look at our forecast closer to home. And here's weather specialist Denise Andriacci.
Sun and cloud this morning and afternoon, but keep your eyes to the skies. We have the risk for thunderstorms, and we can thank some of that higher heat and humidity for helping to fuel that risk. Also some showers this evening, partly cloudy overnight for Ottawa and Smiths Falls. Overnight lows, very mild. It's going to be a cool and wet couple of days after this warm weather. For Wednesday, showers highs near 17, and Thursday, chance of showers near 21. Daytime highs today near 29 degrees.
A cloudy sky over Ottawa and the Valley right now. Smiths Falls 22 degrees, a humidex of 30. In Ottawa, it's 24, but feels like 31. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show.
The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
We'll get to some calls shortly, but first we have a live news event to cover, and that is Canada's next Governor General. It is Mary Simon. Mary Simon. Prime Minister making it official right now.
Madame Simon donnera vie à sa vision d'un Canada plus fort pour tous lorsqu'elle occupera cette haute fonction. De ses années d'expérience aux nombreux honneurs qu'elle a reçus, Simon as Canada's first Indigenous Governor General. Canada is a big country. Canada is a diverse country. So it is only by reaching out to those around us, it is only by building bridges, bringing between people in the north and south, just like in the east and west, that we can truly move forward. Mary Simon has done that throughout her life. I know she will help continue paving that path ahead, and we will all be stronger for it. Today, after 154 years, our country takes a historic step. I cannot think of a better person to meet the moment. With that, it is a true honor to introduce Canada's Governor General designate, Ms. Mary Simon. Mary.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Prime Minister. First, I just want to say a few words in Inuktitut, so if anybody has a translator. So, Ulumi nakomero mayunga Canada angayok hamaringanik tako hausriyangit ulumi pimariumata Canada sibulipami nunakakasi mayumik inumik inutuinamik dilijimata tatsamunga Governor General of Canada dayo yumut inihaknearamatana nakomero tiyagatatsuminga Prime Minister mik. So I just to say that in English, I would like to thank the Prime Minister for such a warm and thoughtful introduction and for this very historic opportunity. I would like to acknowledge today also that we are standing on the unceded territory of the Algonquin people who have lived on these lands and waters for thousands of years. Let me begin by conveying in the strongest possible terms that I am honored, humbled, and ready to be Canada's first Indigenous Governor General. I would also like to thank Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth for placing her trust and confidence in me to represent her in this wonderful country of ours. I can confidently say that my appointment is a historic and inspirational moment for Canada and an important step forward on the long path towards reconciliation. This is a moment that I hope all Canadians feel part of because my appointment reflects our collective progress towards building a more inclusive, just and equitable society. Inutituka na lang ang miga mamana kindaw mga hawye maya walwak sunga amisunu kisiane ilang ino hawye maya ngina mamis magan. Mary May Simon nguyunga Mary Mimi ateka khataloksimayunga inusutusunga ammalu inutitut ateka ningiukallak Quebec me ukioktatumi nunahaktunga mana nunavimmik tayausungulottok ana anaga inulauksimayuk inutuinnausuni khallunatito khayagani ammalu atataga khallunangutsuni khallunannunganni pisimayuk angayokhaga jaw hatalauksimayuk Hudson Bay Company kunun piroksasunga tamani nunavimisimayunga taimangani ammalu inusera inuttitut piusibunni atoksunga piroksimayunga. So permit me a moment to tell you a little bit about myself. I was born Mary Jeannie May. My Inuk name is Ningiukarlak in Arctic Quebec, now known as Nunavik. My mother was Inuk and my father was from the south, was manager of the local Hudson Bay Company post. I spent my adolescence in Nunavik, living a very traditional lifestyle. Many months out of the year, we camped and lived on the land, hunted, fished, and gathered food, and maintained an active connection with our Inuit heritage and language. Part of my cultural tradition as an Inuk are the strong bonds that are created across the generations. My grandmother, Jeannie, and my mother, Nancy, were my teachers and mentors, and these influences continue today. They both instilled in me a boundless energy for learning, self-improvement, and helping my community. They also taught me to always be proud of who I am and to keep my mind open to other points of view. From my father, I learned about the South and the non-native world from a man who had a profound love and respect for the North, its people and its natural beauty. Combined with these experiences, allowed me to be a bridge between the different lived realities that together make up the tapestry of Canada. I can relate to all people, no matter where they live, what they hope for, or what they need to overcome. As time passed, my work often took me south. I spent my adult life fighting for Indigenous and human rights, pushing for increased access for health care and access for mental health services, and working hard to build better education for our children. So it's fair to say I've grown up twice, once in the northern Canada and once in southern Canada. As Governor General, I am fully committed to setting and maintaining the highest possible standard of work and ethic in all aspects of my duties. Je prête au sérieux mon rôle de défenseur de la diversité.
I take very seriously my role to promote and to support the linguistic and other diversities of Canada that make Canada unique.
As an ambassador for the cultural and linguistic diversity that makes Canada unique. I do want to be clear about something. My bilingualism is Inuktitut and English. However, based on my experience growing up in Quebec, I was denied the chance to learn French during my time in the federal government day schools. I am deeply committed to continuing my French language studies and plan to conduct the business of the Governor General in both of Canada's official languages as well as Inuktitut, one of many Indigenous languages spoken across the country. Indeed, my appointment comes at an especially reflective and dynamic time in our shared history. During my time as Governor General, I will work every day towards promoting healing and wellness across Canadian society. Takani pinasugarinyak takani Governor General Ngulunga, ulutamatia pinasohatolangabunga, mamisaknek pichutigilugu ammalu, inushatiaga harnit kanatamiuliman, ilunalimatia tatamani kanatamiungugata. To me, that means stopping to fully recognize, memorialize, and come to terms with the atrocities of our collective past that we are learning more about each day. It means we must thoughtfully work hard towards the promise of a better tomorrow. I believe we can build a hopeful future in a way that is respectful of what has happened in the past. It means supporting the well-being of people by focusing on our youth and improved educational outcomes for all of our children. It means prioritizing the protection of our natural world so that we can have a healthy climate and planet for generations to come. I believe strongly that if we embrace our common humanity and shared responsibility for one another, Canada's brightest days are yet to come. I am dedicated to doing everything in my power to build and inspire that future. And to all the women and girls out there, please know that we need more of your voices and perspectives in leadership positions across this country. I hope you use my appointment to believe with increased conviction that anything is possible. To the Canadian Armed Forces, I am honored to soon be taking on the role as your new Commander-in-Chief. I want to thank you for your tireless efforts in the fight against COVID-19 here in Canada and your operations being conducted worldwide. I am greatly looking forward to meeting the men and women of the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Canadian Rangers during my tenure. There is much to be done. We need and support of all of Canadians and our governments to rebuild strong, healthy families and communities. I would like to close by again thanking the Prime Minister for his commitment to reconciliation and the courage it took to appoint me to the position of Governor General. I can't wait to roll up my sleeves to embark on our work together, and may wisdom and compassion guide our efforts. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you. That is going to be the country's next Governor General. That is Mary Simon, Governor General designate. More on her extraordinary life and career coming right up. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Well, we're celebrating our 43rd year. It's still family operated. We're in our second generation. We, pre-COVID, we're at about 1,000 employees. We have 20 stores from coast to coast in Canada. We do our own manufacturing. Right here in Ottawa, we have about 160 people that support Canadian-made manufacturing in addition to our retail stores. Taking you back to mid-March and the impact of the pandemic on Lee Valley. Lee Valley was actually in a tough spot. We had just launched our website a few months prior to that, and we were going through, a fairly typical deployment dive where your customers retract as they adjust to the website. And then under stress already, this pandemic hit. And in the early days, it was pretty critical. It hit us really hard. Stores were closed. We weren't sure what to do, so we had to go right into survival mode. As a result, we had to take our workforce almost back to half of where we were at because the stores were closed, and with 20 stores, that's a big retail workforce. But what we were able to do pretty quickly, with a little luck, being essential, selling tools and hardware, we were able to adjust our business model, with respect to the stores and our fulfillment operation. That new website that we were under stress worked out well for us because as the world was under house arrest, people were looking to online, and the conversion to our online sales in some cases almost doubled. And we saw tremendous interest in things to do at home. Where we were lucky once again is, and fortunate, is at our product offering. You know, work at home tools, craft, hobbies, backyard, container gardening, you name it. What we sold was really appealing to people. With respect to our stores, Lee Valley, you know, a rare unknown fact was that we were one of the pioneers of curbside pickup. We've been doing it for 25 years. Pretty much dove right into the application to help with the contactless shopping right away. We took the application, and it's not like a Apple application where you have to download it to your phone and clutter up your phone. This is literally resides right on our website. So you walk into our store with your phone, you pull up our website, and there's a little scan icon. You just tap that, select your store, off you go. You go through the showroom, you scan product, you can read more about it, you can check the on hand, you can add it to your cart, continue to shop, and when you're ready, you just submit it to the counter. We'll go pick it for you. We'll call out your name, we'll check you out, send you on your way. You haven't touched anything. It's completely safe, and it's using a device you're comfortable with and a website that you're familiar with. Amazingly, 9 out of 10 people that used it loved it and want to use it again.
Not taking calls right now because we have a breaking news story. We have the naming of the 30th Governor General in Canadian history. Her name is Mary Simon, the first Indigenous Governor General in Canadian history. The Prime Minister taking some questions during a news conference now, live on City News.
The names of extraordinary Canadians who could serve as Governor General. I am very happy today to be able to announce Ms. Simon as being the next Governor General. She was born in northern Quebec. Her mother tongue is Inuktitut. She learned a second language, English, in the federal school she attended because French was not taught in those schools in the 1950s. That is how things were. She fully understands, because we have had long conversations on this, she fully understands the importance of being able to fully represent all Canadians, and that is why she has made a commitment to take lessons and to learn French. But I will ask Ms. Simon to share her own thoughts on this matter, because we have certainly had conversations on it.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Yes, this is a very important question, and I am firmly committed to learning French. I've taken a number of French lessons, and I've always wanted to learn French, but never really had the opportunity because of my work was full-time all my life. But I've worked in Quebec City quite a bit, and it seems to me that because we have common issues to discuss, that we can find ways to get rid of the barrier in terms of language. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to make a commitment. I have made a commitment to learn French, and I'm ready to start any day after my installation to work at Rideau Hall in the 2 official languages. And I'm sure there will be lots of people there that will actually help me learn to speak French.
Good morning, Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News. Mary Simon, congratulations on your appointment. I'm going to direct my question to you, but I'd also like the Prime Minister to reflect on your answer afterwards. My question, Mary Simon, how do you view your role in the Crown Indigenous relationship, especially being an Indigenous person representing the Crown? And if I may, typically a Governor General has been apolitical and doesn't comment on current events. Do you think that needs to change when it comes to this time we're in, this difficult, challenging, reflective time of reconciliation?
Thank you very much. My role, I understand my role very well. It's apolitical. I'm not appointed as a political person, but I know that there are very important responsibilities associated with my role that will help the working relationship of Canadians and Indigenous people through reconciliation or through other means. And I feel that the cultural differences that we have in our country will go away if we can learn to understand and respect one another. So my role is to be in that work, but not as a political person. So I would not advise, I guess, that the role change at this time anyway.
I think it's important. Every Governor General arrives with their perspective and their stories, but devotes themselves to uniting the country and serving the country. And the issue of reconciliation, which is one that doesn't just touch Indigenous people in this country, but touches all Canadians, and that all Canadians have a role to play in, is going to be an issue on which our new Governor General will be able to lead and serve as she has throughout her entire life. Le rôle de la gouverneure générale est
The role of Governor General is an extremely important one in bringing together Canadians and in representing Canada, as well as in helping Canadians to understand one another and to recognize one another better. That is what Ms. Simon has done all her life. She has built bridges between North and South, Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, and she will bring that perspective to bear on her very important role of Governor General. However, reconciliation is not something for a government alone to achieve or for Indigenous people to achieve. It is something that involves all Canadians, particularly non-Indigenous people. And I know that Ms. Simon's perspective, leadership and service will bring us one step further along the path we need to tread to make Canada an even better place.
Prime Minister, how is the vetting process different this time around than the last time?
We do have
Ms.
to leave this
Simon,
up. Our 10:30 newscast is coming up. A very impressive appointment here from the Prime Minister and the first Indigenous Governor General in Canadian history. Her name is Mary Simon, a longtime advocate and leader for Inuit peoples in Canada. She has received 11 honorary doctorates of laws from Canadian universities. Okay. Served as Chancellor of Trent University, received recognition as a nation builder from the Famous Five, honored by Public Policy Forum for contributions to public life, public policy, governance in Canada, and the list goes on. Officer of the Order of Canada, the National Order of Quebec. She is also a former ambassador to Denmark, I believe. This is the Kingdom of Denmark. More on her, and if this news conference continues, we will listen to this, a breaking news story. The first Indigenous Governor General in Canadian history, named today, Mary Simon. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Tuesday, the 6th of July. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now, a cloudy sky over the Ottawa Valley, 23 in Smiths Falls, feeling like 30. It's 24 in Ottawa with a humidex of 31. Here's what's making news this hour. Breaking news from the federal government, and Canada has its first Indigenous Governor General. The Queen approving the appointment of Mary Simon to the vice-regal position. Born in the Nunavut region of northern Quebec, Simon is a former broadcaster, former Canadian ambassador to Denmark, and a longtime advocate for Inuit culture and rights. Ontario reports 9 more deaths from COVID-19 and 244 new cases of the virus. However, 80 of those cases were ones that happened in 2020, meaning the actual net increase today in the province is 164. Ottawa has 4 of those cases, with none in the surrounding counties, but updated local numbers will come this afternoon. Budget debate underway at Ottawa City Hall's powerful Finance and Economic Development Committee. Looks like you're in for an average tax bill increase of $119 next year, and the budget would increase police spending by up to 3%, despite recent sustained calls to reduce the police budget. Minister Lisa MacLeod announces millions of dollars to help Ottawa's struggling tourism sector. $6 million will go to Ottawa Tourism for things like marketing and creating new activities. Another $2 million will help the Shaw Centre cover its core operating costs. The convention centre has seen its events bookings cancelled during the pandemic. City News Time 10:32. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show.
The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
It's one of those days where you want to listen to the news before you react to the news. So again, there's a live news event happening right now.
And abilities that are very
Museum of Civilization, I believe, in Gatineau is where this is happening. Naming the new Governor General. Her name is Mary Simon, Governor General designate right now, and they're taking questions from the media.
I don't see a conflict because as the Queen's representative of Canada, in Canada, I am very concerned about the circumstances that led to some of the events that we are seeing today. I do understand as an Indigenous terms of our past each day. But when I was asked whether I would take on this important role, I was very excited, and I felt that this was a position that would help Canadians together with Indigenous peoples and Canadians working together, which we call reconciliation, but bringing people together to understand our unique histories, our unique culture, and our way of life. And I think if people understand each other in this way and respect one another, that this is what we call reconciliation. And it's a lifelong experience. It's a journey, and the past is something that we have to come to terms with, but I am going to look forward to ensure that Canadians together will build a better Canada. And that is my important role.
Hey, Glenn McGregor, CTV News. Ms. Simon, as my colleague
Apologize for the feed that's coming from this live news event. It's affecting all the networks right now. I believe it probably has something to do with an internet feed. But again, it's the appointment of the new Governor General. We first learned that this would be announced today. Earlier this morning, her name is Mary Simon. Very impressive and decades-long background in advocacy for Inuit people. And we'll go back to this, David. Yes, seems to have corrected itself. Okay, back to this live news.
As the new Governor General, I will be sitting with many people at Rideau Hall and Canadians to develop a vision that is that is a vision for all Canadians. But personally, my vision is to work in a way that allows for the freedom of people to express who they are and to build a Canada that is working together, not against each other. And I think that I see maybe not in my lifetime, but I see a very bright future for our children and grandchildren if we can start to renew our relationships at the same time respecting the human rights and the atrocities that have happened in the history of Canada.
Okay.
And hopefully we will develop a relationship where this will never happen again.
Thank you. That concludes today's press conference.
Mary Simon, Governor General Designate from Nunavut in northern Quebec. More than 4 decades of advocacy for Inuit, both nationally and internationally, senior leadership positions for a number of organizations and corporations. For years, led the implementation on 10 recommendations that are contained in what's known as First Canadians, Canadians First, which is a national strategy on Inuit education. Has worked closely with education jurisdictions for Inuit people. So, a little more. She is an officer of the Order of Canada, recipient of the National Order of Quebec, Gold Order of Greenland, National Aboriginal Achievement Award, Gold Order of the Canadian Geographic Society, the Simons Medal, SYMONS, Governor General's Northern Award, inducted into the International Women's Hall of Fame, Fellow of the Arctic Institute of North America and the Royal Canadian Geographic Society. I mentioned 11 honorary doctorates of law from Canadian universities, including McGill, Guelph, Trent, University of Alberta, Memorial, Carleton, Queen's, Loyalist College, Mount St. Vincent, UBC, and University of Victoria. Served as Chancellor of Trent University. Honorary witness for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and involved in the creation of a new organization called Canadians for a New Partnership, co-chairs the board of directors, and will now become the first Governor General of Indigenous ancestry in Canadian history. So 10:38. Why don't we take we'll take our break early, I think is what we should do, and then we'll do a big long segment to end this hour. And we can get your reaction to this. While that was happening, we had pre-election goodies being announced by Omar Alghabra. He is the transport minister. That involves high-frequency rail. I'd like to get your take on that as well. And we do have some time. I have about 20 minutes left. We can fit in some phone calls. I know it's not your typical talkback hour, but it's not every day the country appoints a governor general, let alone the first Indigenous governor general in our history. So I wanted to get that in. 10:39. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Papa Jack was started 14 years ago, really by accident more than anything. A friend of mine had bought a grocery store. A popcorn machine was in there. He didn't want it. I ended up by buying it. My family thought I was nuts. When I first said, come and pick up this popcorn machine, my son said, what the heck for? I won't use exact words. But anyway, we started, and it just kept on growing and growing. But at the time, I was the only one selling popcorn in Ottawa. But we persevered as a family, and here we are. So it's been very, very rewarding for my family and myself. And to see our brand name, Papa Jack, and Papa Jack came out of, I wanted something that was going to be very bilingual. So Papa, and then in Ontario, everybody called me Jack, even though my name is Jacques. In Quebec, it's fine, it's Jacques, but in Ontario, it was always Jack. So we married the two together, Papa, Jack. With the store that we have on Thurston Drive, it basically, the factory's in the back. If you come into the store, you can see how the popcorn is being made during the week. So it adds an extra layer of, you can see the sanitation, you can see how we do it. It's not like making popcorn. Most people thought when I started this, I was making popcorn in my garage or in my basement. No, never did. It was started in this building, in the back of the building, and then we kept growing and growing until what we have now. My daughter and my son came up with a brilliant idea to do a fundraiser online. So basically all people have to do is to register here, and we give them a special code number. And with that code number, they tell their friends, their neighbors, everybody to buy online from us with that code number. And then at the end of each period, could be 2 weeks, could be a month, then we'll pay them a 20% of all the businesses that we got through that code number. One thing I'd like to say is thank you to all the Ottawa people who have supported us and support local businesses. Sometimes people, they talk about buying locally. Now it becomes that much more important to buy locally, to support your local businesses, because not too many of them are going to survive this. We're fortunate that we're so far so good.
Time to talk back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Yes, and they mean it this time. We do have not a lot of time to take some calls, but if you have been listening to the hour, what do you think of the appointment of the new Governor General? Governor General designate Mary Simon. Very impressive. I have to say before today, not familiar with her career, but just based on what I know and listening to her for the last half hour or so, speaking about her past, about her life, about her career, and her goals with the office. Very impressive to say the least. I think Mr. Trudeau may have scored a winner here, but only time will tell. We'll see. So if you have any reaction to that, 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. And then, while that was happening, we also had this announcement about high-frequency rail. Okay, this is kind of the pre-election goodie of the day. Okay. High-frequency rail, what I call the fabled Quebec City to Toronto corridor. Okay, they want to make it more comfortable for you. They're calling it high-frequency rail. They're not necessarily calling it high-speed rail. I'm curious. You heard the Professor Ian Lee, he's with us every Tuesday, say he's doubtful that it will live up to the billing, that it would actually deliver a return on investment. I would describe the professor's take as a kind of a vanity project. It's a vanity project. It's probably a mode of transportation that's not even really all that attractive for the business traveler who maybe wants to get to Toronto and back maybe in the same day. But what do you think about it? What do you think about it? I mean, would you use it? You know, if you needed to get to Toronto, if you needed to go to Montreal, if you needed to go to Quebec City, high-frequency rail, would you use it? Or would you fly? Or, you know, given the distances involved, you know, a 4-hour drive that way or a 4-hour drive that way, or if you're going to Quebec City, you know, 5.5, 6 hours, would you take the train? Or would you drive? See, I don't know. With those kinds of distances, it's hard to get me out of my own vehicle with those distances. I would just prefer, even if I'm going to Toronto, I prefer to drive instead of fly. But it depends on the circumstances. High-frequency rail, not necessarily high-speed rail, but high-frequency rail, HFR. That is the big pre-election announcement today, high-frequency rail. They're doing two announcements about it, which is, I just love that. One is not enough. Right? They're going to do one in Quebec City, and then all the cabinet ministers and all their staff will hop into all the cars, and they'll drive to Trois-Rivières, and they'll do the same announcement. But are you going to use it? I guess that's the big thing. Would you use it if you're going to Toronto, to Montreal, Quebec City? if the service was faster. I mean, bullet train fast, maybe. Or would you fly or would you drive? I think I'd prefer to drive. Boy, it's interesting to look at the lay of the land when it comes to federal politics right now. You have the Liberals, and there's a new poll today, 37% in the polls. They can seemingly do no wrong. And whenever there has been any wrongdoing, none of it sticks to them. And then you have a Conservative Party, new poll, 25%. According to the Abacus poll, they're 25% of the polls, which is very much the bottom for them. So far. It's the lowest they've ever polled, according to Abacus, for the Abacus poll. The Conservatives have never had a score lower than 25%, but they're 25% in the latest poll. I mean, it's nothing but bad news. There's no hope. There's no enthusiasm for the Aaron O'Toole rebrand, rebirth, retread, whatever you want to call it. And it's just, so far, it's just failed to launch. It's failed to inspire. And I mean, clearly there's an election in the offing, right? I mean, look how many grand promises are being made and how the funding announcements are coming along so fast and furious. I mean, here in the Ottawa area, we had the $1 billion electric bus buy. Signed, sealed, delivered in 2 weeks. We had money for the airport light rail station just a few days later. And then a few days after that, funding announcement about social housing. And that was all just in the Ottawa area. And I mean, every day there's a Liberal MP making an announcement somewhere in Canada. Guaranteed. Yesterday, the Prime Minister was in Sault Ste. Marie. More than $400 million for Algoma Steel. To get Algoma off of coal in the steelmaking process. You need coal for the blast furnace. They're going to use something called electric arc blast furnaces instead. So a green announcement, greening the steel industry. Now, you could question whether the government really needs to give Algoma Steel $400 million of our money, because this is always, it hasn't always been the case for Algoma Steel that they've been making money, but they're making money now. They made $100 million, $114 million in their most recent quarter. So if you're turning a profit of more than $1 million a day, why do you need my money? And how many times have you heard it said, going green will create jobs? But it's on the front page of the National Post today. The union representing the steelworkers in Sault Ste. Marie says yesterday's announcement means hundreds of people are going to actually lose their jobs. Good paying union jobs in a steel mill. Build back better with fewer workers. I don't think that's how it was supposed to go. But that was just yesterday's news. And then you have, this one. Cabinet ministers, a trio of cabinet ministers hitting up Quebec City and Trois-Rivières with the local mayors in tow. Omar Alghabra, Jean-Yves Duclos, François-Philippe Champagne for this high-frequency rail announcement, is what they're calling it. Okay, not bullet trains, high-frequency trains along a dedicated rail line. The transport minister leaked it through his social media feed yesterday. When you look, when it comes to this Quebec City-Toronto corridor, this is such a well-worn government promise. It has its own entire wardrobe. It is that well-worn. Governments of all stripes have talked about doing this at one point or another. There's some doubt about whether this is even a brand new announcement, whether it's a rehash of a previous announcement that was already announced, and it's like, here we go again. The CBC's write-up on it this morning said the federal government, quote, announced more funding for the project in its 2021 budget, headlined by a pledge of $491 million over 6 years to Via Rail for infrastructure investments. So when you parse that there, you're really talking about $82 million a year for the next 6 years, which is not getting you a lot of rail The 4-kilometer spur line from South Keys to the airport here in Ottawa is $155 million. What do you get for $82 million? It doesn't get you from Quebec City to Toronto, that's for sure. This is what I guess Kathleen Wynne, if she was still around, she would call it a stretch goal. Maybe that's what it's a stretch goal. Kind of like universal child care, pharmacare. It's just kind of something that's promised every now and then the election passes and the government gets consumed by other things, other priorities. But it's a nice idea. There is a map provided here. It shows where the current rail line is and where they would build the new rail line. You leave Quebec City, next stop Trois-Rivières, then into Laval, then into Montreal, eventually onto Ottawa. Go through Ottawa, stop there at Smiths Falls, Kingston, Peterborough, and eventually into Toronto. There's also some speculation this might have nothing more to do than this. It's just Liberal electioneering in Quebec because they would build a new station in Trois-Rivières, and that's a riding that the Bloc holds right now. The Bloc MP who holds it is not running again. The Liberals would love to win it, and maybe that's all there is to all of this nonsense about a high-frequency rail is one riding around Trois-Rivières. Well, I guess we'll see. 3 cabinet ministers, 2 announcements, 2 different cities. Holy cow, right? Come on. I mean, and they're in-person announcements. These aren't even virtual announcements. Are these low-carbon announcements here? You're crisscrossing Quebec for crying out loud. $500 million, high-frequency rail, Quebec City, Toronto corridor. Maybe they really mean it. Gosh, the money, though. Yesterday, $420 million. Let's go green with steelmaking in Sault Ste. Marie. Whatever this is, $500 million, high-frequency rail. Almost $1 billion right there. 2 days of election goodies. And gosh almighty, in the meantime, we're following up on this story. We're going to have more on this story in the final hour of our program. The hospital horror story from Hull should be national news. This story. I mean, how does this happen in Canada where you're supposed to be so proud of the universal healthcare system? The universal healthcare system is supposed to be a very symbol of Canada, right? Something that we take great pride in, our healthcare system. Look how we take care of our people in Canada. Well, what about this story? I mean, Anne Pominville, 58 years old, admitted to the Hull Hospital, severe stomach pain. They can't find her a bed. They can't even find her a stretcher. She is in such pain, she can't sit up. She has to lay down, but there's no bed for her. There's no stretcher for her. So they lay her down on the floor of the hospital in Hull. And she died. Her heart stopped, and she died. Went to the hospital June 27th, waited for hours on the floor. Husband took her to the car. The husband waited in the emergency room. Waited for her name to be called. Eventually, it was called. She got in to see the doctor. They transferred her from the Hull Hospital to the Gatineau Hospital for surgery. And almost 48 hours later, staff called her husband only to tell him that his wife had passed away. The family didn't even know that she had been transferred. Didn't even know that she had been transferred to another hospital to have surgery. My gosh, healthcare on the other side of the river. I had heard horror stories that you don't want to end up in one of the Outaouais hospitals. But I've never heard a story quite like that one. So we're going to have a patient ombudsman coming on our program. Final hour of the program. I mean, it's really about priorities, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? Isn't it really about priorities? High-frequency rail to win a riding in Trois-Rivières. I guess that's a priority for the Liberals. $400 million priority, $500 million priority. Why isn't healthcare more of a priority, especially after all of the shortcomings that have been exposed by the pandemic? Gosh, if the pandemic hasn't taught us anything about the state of the Canadian healthcare system, when are we going to learn? There is very little room to maneuver. There is no surge capacity to speak of. Because governments insist that they can fund the healthcare system by increasing funding by 2% a year when the costs are going up 5% or 6% or 7% a year. And they've starved it of any kind of meaningful reform. And it's a situation that is only going to get worse as we get older, with the gray tsunami washing ashore already. And we know that during the First Minister's conference calls, the provincial premiers begged the Prime Minister for more money for health care. And yet there was no commitment for any increase in health care transfers to the provinces in the last federal budget. And despite multiple announcements today, chock full of these pre-election goodies, what are we not hearing about? We are not hearing about health care. Lots of money for trains. Lots of money for electric buses. Lots of money for green steel plants, even if it means steel workers lose their jobs. Nothing on health care. Nothing on health care. The 11 o'clock news is coming right up. And then right after the 11 o'clock news, we'll have more on the high-speed rail announcement and the situation in Quebec. And as well, the latest economic analysis on the Canadian economy and how the relief programs and the lack of being able to spend any money has left Canadians with a so-called wall of wealth. Just ahead, Rob Snow Show on City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Tuesday, the 6th of July. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now, a cloudy sky, 24 degrees in Ottawa, feeling like 31. It's 23 in Smiths Falls with a humidex of 30. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Breaking news from the Canadian Museum of History, where Mary Simon has been announced as Canada's next Governor General, the first Indigenous person to hold that role. Our Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney joins us with more.
In a news conference at the Museum of History, just steps away from the museum's Indigenous exhibit, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau confirms Mary Simon, an Inuk leader and former ambassador for Canada, will be Canada's next Governor General.
We need more leaders like Ms. Simon in high office, people who understand what it means to take on real issues and create positive change. And that's exactly what brings us here today.
Simon was born in northern Quebec and has been a longtime advocate for Inuit culture and rights. She also serves as Canada's ambassador to Denmark and as well as an ambassador for circumpolar affairs. She's also been named to the Order of Canada. Simon speaks English and Inuktitut and says she will learn French on the job. At this time of the tragic discovery of unmarked graves at former residential schools, Ms. Simon says she sees herself in a role of helping with the country through the healing process.
To me, that means stopping to fully recognize, memorialize, and come to terms with the atrocities of our collective past that we are learning more about each day.
Rideau Hall has been vacant since Julie Payette resigned as Governor General back in January following workplace harassment allegations. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court has been filling in the interim. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News Time 11:02. This afternoon, the Prime Minister and Saskatchewan's Premier will head to Cowessess First Nation for a ceremony which the local chief says will transfer control over children in care to the community. Cowessess is among several Indigenous groups that plan to handle their own child and family services as allowed under federal legislation. It is also the site of a former residential school where ground-penetrating radar recently detected a potential 751 unmarked graves. The Assembly of First Nations 42nd Annual General Assembly underway today. Outgoing National Chief Perry Bellegarde has signaled he will not seek re-election after 6 years on the job. 7 candidates are vying to replace him, including 3 women, a first for the AFN. Several ballots are expected to be taken before a winner is declared tomorrow. The body of a Canadian is among 4 more victims found in the rubble of a collapsed condo building in southern Florida. That brings the death toll to 32. Confirmation of the Canadian death comes from Global Affairs Canada, which says 3 other Canadians are still among the 117 people who remain unaccounted for in the June 24th collapse. Local officials say lightning from unrelated thunderstorms have forced the recovery effort to pause at times in a garage area in the rubble has filled with water. Ontario's education minister says the province is considering incentives to boost vaccinations in the coming weeks. Stephen Lecce says the government is looking at new ways to promote vaccination. The province aims to offer 2 shots to all eligible students before the start of the school year. U.S. President Joe Biden is refocusing his attention on vaccination efforts in his country. ABC's Karen Travers is in Washington.
President Biden meets with his COVID-19 response team today at the White House. After that, he'll deliver remarks on his administration's campaign to vaccinate Americans. The nation did not meet the president's goal of getting 70% of American adults partly vaccinated by July 4th, coming up short. About 67% of adults have received at least 1 shot. The president on Independence Day said getting vaccinated is the, quote, most patriotic thing you can do. Karen Travers, ABC News, Washington.
City News Time 11:04. Time now for a look at our forecast. Here's weather specialist Denise Andriacci.
Mainly cloudy with sunny breaks today for Ottawa. The thunderstorm risk is this afternoon with showers and the risk for thunderstorms again this evening. A daytime high near 28 and that intense humidity, a humidex of 39. Showers for Wednesday near 17 degrees. Cloudy with showers Thursday and very cool, highs near 21. Your daytime high today, 28.
Right now, a cloudy sky, 23 degrees in Smiths Falls, 24 in Ottawa, the humidex near 31. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So I'm trying to picture this. Is this really right out of, Meet George Jetson? Get off the light rail train or get off the bus and the autonomous vehicle, the driverless vehicle picks you up and shuttles you off to your employer in the Canada North Business Park. Is this the stuff of dreams or reality? Well, let's ask Michael Tremblay from Invest Ottawa. Joins me this morning here on the Rob Snow Show on City News. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for your time this morning.
Well, it's very nice to hear from you. Canada North Business Association proposes autonomous shuttle service from transit station. I saw this story this morning at ottawa.citynews.ca. So I guess the Canada North Business Association made this pitch to the Transportation Committee, made a presentation to the Transportation Committee to do a one-year pilot project. What would this pilot project involve?
Yeah, so it's really a project in a series of projects that we've been doing in the region to test out these new technologies as they gradually become more and more viable on city streets. You may recall, Rob, we did one last year at Tunney's Pasture for 3 weeks with the public, and that was with an OEM called Easy Mile, and that went extremely well. So this would be the next one in a series that we're looking at doing. And so what this would look like is essentially a way in which to showcase some of the lower speed shuttles. So this is probably something upwards of 30 kilometers an hour that we can safely and very carefully operate the shuttles to be able to illustrate how we can deal with the last mile. As you know, Canada is a very large geographic footprint. Light rail is a very good solution to a point, and then you need to deal with that last part of the journey, if you will.
Right. Okay. So how will the pilot program work? I mean, give me a sense of it. What you envision here? What's the vision here?
So we're framing it now. So what we have now from the feasibility work from KNBA is the concept. And so how I would see it envision running is there's a very high density area of the park that is near March Road, near Leggett, in that vicinity.
Okay.
And we would take a relatively small area, and we would operate it as if it were a transit service. Like, we'd have to make sure that it's full production quality in order to be able to understand and learn from how that as a pilot would work as an extension of the existing transit network. So this is the objective, is to actually showcase. Our goal would, of course, be to work with the regulators because this is an opportunity for us to collect data and to learn from exactly how these shuttles operate, probably in 3 seasons. We'll consider winter as well. Okay. Yeah, we'll consider winter as well, but we absolutely have to be perfectly safe as we go through this. As you know, we have AreaX.0 where we do the prototyping and the testing in advance of anything we do on public roads. So we'll do that first, and then our intention would be to deploy on city roads.
Okay. So are real autonomous vehicles going to be carrying real people?
Oh, absolutely.
As part of the pilot program?
Absolutely.
Really?
This is a true public test. These are high quality multi-sensor units that we actually do quite a bit of testing today at the private site. So we actually have the capability. We've got pods that run today at AreaX.0. We've got a fully autonomous Lexus built by a local firm at our site called Autonomous Stuff. So we do have the capability, and the more important thing is we actually have the talent in Ottawa, given our history, to really push the envelope here. So I'm very excited about the potential of pilots like this one.
Okay. So I haven't seen these vehicles. What do they look like? I climbed into one. What are they like?
Yeah, these the ones that we would have had at Tunney's is probably going to be similar in size. They'll run a little faster, but you could have standing up to about 12 people. Obviously, we wouldn't do that today given the pandemic, but the shuttles themselves are, I would say, about a third of the size of a city bus. So they're a relatively small size.
Right.
They are loaded with technology, so you'll see different features on the shuttle that that actually are there to, look around and to use laser-guided devices to understand what is out there. When we did tunnies, we had a lot of interesting encounters with Canada geese and with snow blowing sideways, so that actually had an effect. So we learned a lot, and I would see them being next generation from what we did at tunnies. So they'll be a little bit more sophisticated. They'll run a little faster, and I'm super excited about it because we do have the local skill, and I do look forward to actually deploying.
No driver.
No, well,
I mean, you must have somebody there at the controls. You must have a human there, like, just in case.
We do.
Yeah,
we do. So just like on the previous testing that we do, we actually have somebody there just in case. So there's an operator that is able to hit the panic button if need be, and they control it with something that looks a lot like a joystick. And it's not actually connected to the vehicle other than digitally. So it's there. So we will have operators to make sure everything is absolutely safe. What is really important is the data that we gather. These things throw off a lot of data from all the sensors that are on board, and so we'll be studying and doing the research on it. When we did tunnies, we had National Research Council help us with that work. They were incredible partners to work with.
Right.
And for a project like this one, we would probably want to do the same. They're an amazing partner to work with.
Okay. When it comes to a technology like this, I assume these are electric vehicals. They're electric?
These are electric vehicles, yes.
Yeah, okay. We've been talking about this autonomous electric vehicle revolution for a long time, and Ottawa, it seems to me, Michael Tremblay is CEO of Invest Ottawa, it's moving in leaps and bounds, and Ottawa has really become, I would almost describe it as a center of excellence when it comes to the skill set here in the Ottawa area. Can you give us a sense of how this has become an industry in Ottawa, autonomous vehicle technology?
Yeah, actually, we come by this honestly, Rob. We have such a generational capability in telecommunications, in research and development. Our city is very well equipped to go after this market, and we did actually have the first autonomous vehicle testing on city streets in Canada several years ago. As you may recall, in Canada, it was hooked up to live city infrastructure. And when we ran the tunnies pasture shuttles this past year, that was the first time in Ontario streets we had to get special license plates from the province of Ontario. They were great partners in it, and Transport, of course, helping us along the way. And we're connected with the work of the World Economic Forum. So when we do these projects, we use their Safe Driving Initiative technology, their methodology. So they've become partners as well. And this is a group out of San Francisco. So we definitely have a global view of what we can do here. And I believe that this is one of the areas that actually showcases the very best of what Ottawa has to offer the world. I believe at my core that the world needs Ottawa.
Very well said. Okay, thank you very much. Nice to hear from you again today.
My pleasure.
It's
Thanks
incredibly
so much. Have a
interesting.
wonderful day.
Yeah, you too. The CEO of Invest Ottawa, Michael Tremblay. Well, the stuff they're working on, it's so cool. 11:14, be right back. Rob Snow Show on City News.
Part of the reason I got back into this is because I am creative, and I also wanted to kind of have a fun flair, 50s vibe. All of the boxes are kind of fun names, the colors are fun, the logo is fun, and it's not just the package that I want to bring joy to people's lives, it's also the feeling that they get when they receive it, to know that there's someone that thinks of them and they're missing them, and showing that they care when they can't be there. The smallest of the subscription boxes is the red box, the classical box. So you would get 5 to 7 items from the variety of categories. Those do change quarterly. However, with items that are more popular, we'll bring them back as people ask for them, or you could get them as an add-on option. And then those items will be included in the Jazzy box, the same items from the first, although they'll be in a larger size, more quantity, as well as a couple extra items. And then in the largest box, the Doo-Wop Deluxe, which is our most popular, that is a comprehensive offering of all of the other 2 boxes, plus additional. So for example, if you were to get a certain item in the smallest of the boxes, that item would still be offered in the large, but in a bigger size. So you're getting everything bigger plus an extra few items. The first thing is I look for Canadian suppliers and manufacturers. That is something I'm very proud of. I make sure that the products are safe, that they fit into the packages that we offer, obviously. They have to be the proper size and weight. I have approximately 300 items that we have so far that we can order that basically help make people's lives easier. There's snacks, there's self-care items, there's entertainment, a little bit of everything. And basically I try it and test it, and if it's duly approved, then I include it in our packages. So some of the categories that we have is we offer treats, which is of course everyone likes treats, no matter how old you are. So we have things like nuts, chocolates, different types of snacks, maybe a handmade piece of jewelry. We also include pieces of jewelry as well, occasionally. We also have our pamper items. So your pamper items would include things like your bath soaks, your specialty lotions, things like that. Two other categories we offer are leisure. Leisure would include things such as puzzles, adult coloring books, paint by numbers, crosswords, word find, Sudoku, if that's how you say it. And we also have items for self-care and health. So masks, sanitizers, sanitizing wipes. They're all natural, non-drying, made with natural ingredients. So they're very good for everyone, especially in this time that we're dealing with.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So it's 11:18. Still ahead, Chief Economist from the Bank of Montreal on the state of the Canadian economy. The bank calls it the wall of wealth. The wall of wealth. In a new report that Canadians spent so much time cooped up that they have now accumulated a wall of wealth, and the housing boom has certainly helped the overall bottom line for Canadians. Now, 11:18. So, the hospital horror story from Hull. 58-year-old woman, Anne Pominville, admitted to Hull Hospital, severe stomach pain. Can't find her a bed, can't find her a stretcher. She's in the emergency department. But she is in such severe pain that she can't sit up. She has to lay down. But they don't have any beds for her or stretchers. They don't have nothing. They can't even put her in the hallway. The only way they can accommodate her is that they make her a makeshift bed with blankets and she has to stretch out on the floor. She eventually passed away. She got to see a doctor. They transferred her to another hospital, apparently didn't inform the family. And she passed away. Heart stopped during surgery, and she passed away. But this, how does this happen in Canada? How does this happen in Canada? We're joined now. Paul Brunet joins me now, patients' rights advocate, Conseil pour la protection des malades. Mr. Brunet, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
What is your reaction to this story, sir?
Shocked. You know, like I said to other media, I've seen that kind of situation, patients lying on the floor in some poor countries, in some very poor countries with no systems, with no health systems. I have never seen that kind of situation. For almost 25 years, I've been a spokesperson. I've never seen that. I was shocked, horrified, and I am even more horrified today after learning a few more information.
Okay. Such as, sir? New information.
Well, at least two. One is that the husband asked the emergency personnel let me take my wife in the car so she can rest and relax more comfortably. They said, no, sir. If she's not there when we call her, she loses her turn. Sorry, but this is not lack of personnel. This is a lack of humanity and dignity. The second information I just learned this morning is that this hospital in Hull had closed a few days before 40 beds, 40 beds in the hospital. So the pretension of the person that there was no bed available is totally false. Of course, with the protocol at emergency, it was hard to decide to take the lady and install her in a bed on one floor, that is in a unit that is slow. But don't tell me there was no bed. There were 40 beds closed.
Yes. Yeah, maybe not a room. Maybe not a room. Maybe you don't have a room available, but certainly if it's just a case of, can we find this woman a bed? Sure, we have beds. We have 40 of them.
So I'm sorry, but this is not lack of personnel. This is lack of humanity and dignity, and I'm shocked, and I find it horrifying and shame on anyone, because, the Minister of Health is responsible for a few things. We all agree on that. But when it comes to one-on-one on the floor like this, refusing the husband to take the person in a more comfortable fashion, refusing a bed whereas there are beds available, to me, this is not lack of personnel. This is lack of humanity. We were straightforward in conformity with the protocols, but we were not very generous and certainly not humane in this precise situation, to say the least.
So as you say, you've been looking at cases as a patient's rights advocate for about 25 years. So in this particular case, if you were to launch some kind of investigation, or you would demand an investigation, what is it you would like to know, Mr. Brunet?
First, I would like to know what caused the disease of the lady. Was her disease caused by the lateness of the intervention? Because as you know, she was taken from Hull to Gatineau because the hospital at Hull could not make intervention. So what happened? Are we going to have a coroner's inquest? It doesn't seem that it is going to be the case. The Minister of Health said, I want to know more about it. Can't you say that it's unacceptable? I'm fed up of these ministers that have been succeeding one another for the past 25 years. I've been a spokesperson, with hardly being able to put their pants on, like we say in French, mettre les culottes, and say things and don't agree with certain things that are happening. Because the pandemic, like we say, has shoulders very wide. In French, we say the pandémie a le dos large, Pandemic is the responsible of everything. That's not true. There was grave problems of organization and dispensation of care even before pandemic. You have over 150,000 patients in Quebec waiting to get surgery, elective surgery. You had 100,000 before pandemic.
Right.
So,
Well, certainly, chronic staff shortages, bed shortages, long wait times in the West Quebec hospitals. That didn't happen because of the pandemic. That's a long-known issue in some of those hospitals before the pandemic. So, yeah.
My observations have led me to pretend that the waiting list to get elective surgery as the waiting time at emergency is unique in Quebec. One thing that you guys have and that other provinces have is the nursing practitioners, specialized nurses, who are able to open nursing clinics and take care of minor emergencies. That is helping a lot. But as we speak now, the doctors' unions are so strong in Quebec that no way. We even had a bill 2 years ago that we were able to introduce this authorization. What the nursing practitioners do is that they leave the province and go and work elsewhere, where they are appreciated for the kind of training they got.
Sure.
And we don't have that in Quebec. So there's a lot of things that need to be settled by anyone who finally, eventually, I hope, is going to have the guts to do and say what has to be said, because after 25 years, I can tell you that a lot of promises, not a lot of improvement in our
Right. So you would want to know if the delay in getting her some kind of care hastened her death. I would like to know. I'm reading from one of the news stories. Her family said they didn't know that she had been transferred until 48 hours later.
Exactly.
I've never heard tell of something like that. So
I've heard that before.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So again, is this lack of personnel, of lack or minimum of dignity of informing the family? Lack of personnel has wide shoulders.
Yes.
The dos large, I could say in French.
Okay.
And I don't think that everything that happened there is due to the pandemic or lack of personnel. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brunet. Nice to hear from you, sir, and have your perspective this morning. Patients' rights advocate. Terrible story. Conseil pour la protection des malades. The FedCo meeting is happening now via Zoom. What's happening here, David? David's been paying attention more than I have.
We are hearing some delegates from the public speak on behalf of reversing the planned increase, the suggested increase to the Ottawa police budget.
Police budget.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Some of those things, they didn't do it as well as I want. We're now 2021, and we can learn from those. And this is not a huge cost item. The benefits to the city are huge. So I think we're at 10 homicides this year. This is outrageous. If that trend continues, which it may, we are going to be moving towards a Toronto level. We should be going in the other direction.
We have other questions, Dr. Waller, for you.
I have one very quick follow-up, Dr. Waller, if I may. The Glasgow comparison that you made, you presented a budget this morning on several of your slides.
Let's leave that. We may return to that before the end of our program. This is the Rob Snow Show, and this is City News.
One for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, the 6th of July. Good morning. I'm Sarah Buchan. Right now in Ottawa, we've got mostly cloudy skies, a little bit breezy out of the west-southwest, 24 degrees, cloudy and 23 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. Mary Simon, an Inuk leader and former Canadian diplomat, has been named as Canada's 30th Governor-General. She's also the first Indigenous person to serve in that role. Simon, who was born in the Nunavut region of northern Quebec, is a longtime advocate for Inuit culture and rights. She's served as Canada's ambassador to Denmark and the Canadian ambassador for circumpolar affairs. The need to appoint a replacement has become more pronounced in recent weeks, as signs point to the Liberals moving toward an election call this summer or fall. Ottawa Public Health confirms 2 new cases of COVID-19 in the capital out of 244 new cases reported province-wide today. Now, today's numbers provincially include 80 additional cases from the Toronto Health Unit that date to last year in a data cleanup. The Leeds Grenville Lanark Health Unit confirms 1 new case of COVID-19. Elsewhere locally, no new cases for Eastern Ontario. And Public Health Ontario is removing 2 cases from the Renfrew County and District Health Unit's case totals. Ontario's Education Minister says the province is considering incentives to boost vaccinations in the coming weeks. Stephen Lecce says the government is looking at new ways to promote vaccination. The province is aiming to offer 2 shots to all eligible students before the start of the school year. All youth aged 12 and up can now book accelerated second doses. I'm Sarah Buchan. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Can we ditch our masks? Calgary City Council announced yesterday, voted yesterday to get rid of the mask mandate. The mask mandate for that city. In British Columbia, no masks necessary, recommended, but not mandated as of July 1st, as of Canada Day. So, 4 or 5 days now. Here in Ottawa, I was looking it up this morning. Our mask bylaw, the mask mandate in Ottawa, is supposed to be in effect until late August. I believe it's August 25th, August 26th. But even if there's no mask bylaw, should you still wear a mask? Should you still wear a mask? That's what we want to get into right now with the help of Dr. Lisa Barrett, infectious disease physician and researcher at Dalhousie University in Halifax. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning.
Should I dump my mask, get rid of them all, throw them all out? Never again.
Clearly.
I'm done with them.
Clearly.
I'd love to.
Very easy answers.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think right now?
Well, we're at a point where it's a great time for us to reflect, I think, on why we wear masks, what it means if we don't wear masks, and what Canadians and certainly certain folks think is the right thing to do at a point in the pandemic. So we wear masks, just to be clear, to protect the people around us from our respiratory droplets. And so that means that if you're somebody who's in the presence of somebody who's still at risk of getting COVID, and you are not fully vaccinated or may be carrying COVID, then wearing a mask may well make sense. If you are a person who's had 2 vaccines and you're more than 2 weeks out from your second vaccine, and the number of COVID cases around you is pretty low, then your ability to be a risk to the person in front of you is pretty low, and therefore wearing a mask might be of more limited use, even inside. It is not of no use. Clearly, vaccines are amazing, but they're not perfect. And therefore, this all comes back then to how we as a society want to deal with how we proceed next. Because unlike most other health decisions we make, anything related to respiratory viruses or infections affects the people who share the air around us. So, gray area right now. You've got to know what someone's vaccine status is to be able to risk stratify. And is that right? Do we have the right to know what people's vaccine status is? That's another big question, and it's important.
Then you're in the realm of ethics and medical privacy, right? So
you really are.
Yeah. But the fact is, we have. What do we have? About 35% of the population, roughly, has had nationally, 2 doses of vaccine. It varies by province. But so I guess we have to look at it. 2/3 of Canadians, and really, the people we're seeing every day or bumping into every day or going grocery shopping with every day or whatever in our natural course of our daily lives are still not fully vaccinated, which means there is still risk there. Right.
There is. And certainly I think we'd be a little naive to think that no risk is where we're headed. That's probably not the goal. Nothing we do. Crossing the street's pretty risky depending on where you are in this country. So risk is something that we live with, and we're going to have to learn to live with COVID. The question is, what's acceptable? And what are some of the things we need to think about? Is it just hospitalizations and deaths? Or does COVID infection, because it has some longer-term side effects in many people, more so than flu maybe, do we care about other outcomes? Do we care about spreading COVID from one person to another, even if it doesn't mean death or hospitalization? And we haven't had a lot of those conversations yet. Certainly, even for milder disease, it seems like the vaccines are also helpful and do prevent transmission, but our Delta variants do transmit more easily, certainly helping to keep hospitalizations low, even in places with lots of Delta, like the UK. And that's that back and forth here with masks. I suspect right now, the answer probably is if provinces are choosing to get rid of masks, okay. If people choose to still wear them inside, I hope that folks are kind to each other and respect people's different choices without there being a reverse stigma to people who decide to still wear them.
Okay. I would like to know what you think about this. In today's column in the Globe and Mail by Andre Picard, who's a greatly respected healthcare columnist in Canada, award-winning columnist, he says, mask wearing should be seen, as it is in many parts of Asia, as a gesture of consideration towards others, and as a necessity for some, particularly those at higher risk of infection, but as a gesture of consideration toward others. As though it's in our minds, we almost have to have like a cultural shift. I'm doing this for you. I'm wearing this mask for you. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that comes back to 2 of the points we just briefly talked about. One is why you wear a mask. It's for the people around you more than you. It's not so much a protective thing for yourself. It's for the people around you. And number 2, you have to respect what people need or want around you in situations where there is some risk. And let's all be clear, there's still a psychologic process to all of this and getting used to a new threat in our world. It's a reduced threat at this point, but that's going to take a little bit of work. So I do think we really do need to hold on to that concept, just like vaccines are about consideration for those around you, not just yourself. Masks are very similar. Cultural shift, maybe. Maybe it's okay. I think there are going to be some places and some people who decide to hang on to masks, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. And we're kind of going, what an incredible year and a half just in, I don't know, my own personal mindset is, oh gosh, I do not want to wear a mask. This is taking a lot of effort on my behalf. This is so weird. And I certainly don't like being told to wear a mask, but I will comply. And I have. And now you don't go anywhere without it, and you just kind of get used to it. And now it's going to get hard to. It's going to take some time, I think, to get over this idea. I don't have to wear this anymore. I don't have to be that afraid anymore, or that careful anymore, or whatever the case might be. It's a real it's a real change in mindset, I think, for a lot of people. What do you think, Doctor?
Absolutely. And I certainly am no behavioral psychologist, but everything we do in medicine and in science tries to at least integrate a little bit how people make change or how they take advice, because there's no point to give someone medical advice or science advice if you don't couch it in how people respond. And I think it really is important to recognize that there are lots of folks out there. Let's be clear, I hate masks. Probably going to err on the side of wearing it a little longer. And then let's think a little longer term. Everyone's too tired right now to think longer term. But we're going to head into a fall with a respiratory season, a respiratory virus season. We've just went through a year where we had almost no loss of work from sickness related to flu and the common cold. A lot of people and a lot of employers and a lot of society didn't hate that. They liked being well. They liked that change of not being sick routinely with multiple respiratory viruses. They liked masks. And while it's not my cup of tea, I think it's good for us to think about the fall. And what does it take, to your point, to change behavior back to wearing masks if we need to in the fall? And so I think as we think about taking them away, be mindful that we may need to also consider bringing them back at points, and how do we do that in a way that makes people less worried and afraid, and still protects people who need it.
Yeah, in addition to controlling the spread of COVID-19, it's been pointed out that it seems to have also had the benefit of reducing the number of hospitalizations and deaths from the seasonal flu and other respiratory illnesses, wearing a mask, right? So.
Yeah, and let's all be clear, compared to, and I'm not suggesting, biggest fan in the world of vaccines, go get 2 doses of vaccine for everything that's available as far as I'm concerned. But masks are a relatively cheap intervention that prevent loss of productivity, loss of life, and hospitalization for many things, many other respiratory viruses. Far cheaper than rolling out huge vaccine programs in countries that can't afford to do it. And so I think we do need to be mindful that there, as a tool in our prevention toolbox for many respiratory things, masks have some benefits. And it may not be for everyone. It may not be all the time. And as much as I don't love them, I can't deny the fact that they do have some upsides and some very cost-effective upsides that may need to be considered as we go forward.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Barrett. Nice to hear from you today. Infectious disease physician researcher at Dalhousie University, Dr. Lisa Barrett. We're right back with Doug Porter, the chief economist at BMO Capital Markets, coming up on City News.
I wanted to give gifts to my volunteers, so I started making, and I knew this is a skill I had, so I made chocolate that had a cultural based with a teaching, because culture here is not just a little part, it's the large part, it's the fundamental part of our organization. So then we started doing, just little programs, and we sell a few at a fair. And then we started getting contracts. People were starting to enjoy the chocolates, and started getting more and more contracts all across Canada. Then we decided to become a social enterprise, and we were able to create 2 jobs. And Val is one of our chocolatiers, very talented. We were able to help her with employment.
We started just with a little bit in the kitchen, doing a little bit of chocolate together, and next thing, it's just kind of taken off. And it's great, because I love to be creative, and we get to create a lot and make up stuff, and it's just I just love it. It's just great that we get to make money back for Wabano, and it's helping me out, and we're helping just everybody out, Wabano and everything.
We met a very socially conscious business owner being around town, and we decided to partner, because beans and chocolate, coffee and chocolate are sort of created the same way. And there's, and they're very, one origin bean, so it was a good pairing together, and it's been a fantastic partnership for both of us.
I was fortunate enough to get introduced to Barrett, the head of Wagano Fine Chocolates, through a local networking group. And I was completely intrigued by the social enterprise that she was running, and then I looked at what we were doing, trying to support local business and supporting local communities, and it was a perfect match, and it's been fantastic ever since.
We make every batch by hand. We temper it by hand to get to the consistency it needs to be to make a good chocolate. And one of the best, also wonderful things we did, we've connected with Ed, with being around town, and our coffee bars have been amazing hit. So we're really excited about the connection with our coffee.
Of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
So it's been well reported that the savings rate increased over the course of the pandemic. Canadians saved a lot of money, didn't have to go or didn't have the opportunity to spend money in restaurants or shopping malls and the like. So there was this extra cache of cash, you could say. But there's a new report from Doug Porter, Chief Economist, Managing Director, Economics at BMO Capital Markets. And it shows that when it comes to just the extra savings, you're really just starting to scratch the surface, and he calls his latest report the Wall of Wealth. The Wall of Wealth. And welcome back, Doug Porter. Nice to hear from you, sir.
Oh, thanks for having me. Good morning.
Describe, if you will, the extent to which the household financial position for Canadians has strengthened over the course of the pandemic.
Yeah, and I have to say that's probably one of the very unusual aspects of this highly unusual cycle, is that we've actually come out of it with households overall, I'm not saying every household by any means, but the household sector overall in stronger financial shape than before the pandemic began. And of course, a lot of it's due to the heavy-duty government support that we've seen that helps support incomes through the downturn. It's also been helped by the incredibly robust financial markets and the housing market. And those three things combined have increased household financial assets by $2 trillion since the start of the pandemic. So, when people talk about and we've often talked about the extra savings of $200 billion, that's an important number. That's, savings that we might see partially spent down, but that only is the tip of the iceberg in terms of the overall household financial position. And I should mention on the flip side of that, yes, debt has risen, household debt has risen over this period of time, but it's only risen by a little bit more than $100 billion. So stacked up against a $2 trillion increase in household assets suggests that the household sector balance sheets overall have strengthened, which again is very unusual during a recession.
Yeah. Well, when townhomes in suburban Toronto are going for $1 million, maybe, and we see every day there's this crazy story about real estate and bidding wars and frenzies and booms, and our bubble's going to burst. A lot of people will wonder what the surge in home prices has to do with it. How big a factor is that?
It is a big portion of the $2 trillion, no doubt about it. It's roughly speaking about 60%, a little bit more actually of the overall increase. And in my report, I actually did try to strip that out and focus more on the other $700 billion or more of increase in financial assets, which again is split roughly between an increase in just good old bank deposits and currency, partly in equities, in stocks, and partly in people's pension funds and life insurance policies that they've built up this big increase in financial wealth in the last 16 months.
Would you say the real estate side of it, though, Doug, is disproportionate?
I would say yes. It's we're almost to the point where now, if you look at the overall household picture, if you take a snapshot, about half of household wealth is in real estate. Now the other half is in financial assets. That's a very high ratio to have in real estate. And of course, it doesn't look like it's let up. And I should add that these numbers were as of the end of the first quarter, and we know that home prices and admittingly equity markets also took another big step up during the second quarter as well. So when those numbers are finalized in a few months, I think we'll see that the real estate values may well now account for more than half of overall household wealth.
Okay. You say in your most recent report, The Wall of Wealth, every major metric of household financial strength has improved through this highly unusual cycle. So what does that mean? Because economists have been predicting post-pandemic, once the economy really opens up again, and we're getting there slowly, there's going to be a spending spree like you've never seen before. So what does this say about the possibility of a real strong second half of the year for the economy in Canada, Doug?
Yeah, I think that just reinforces the point that when consumers are able to fully engage again, we believe they will. And we've seen it over the past year in areas where people could spend, they were spending. There's just no two ways about it. But even so, they've still built up, that excess savings of more than $200 billion across the board. And there was actually just a survey put out by the Bank of Canada yesterday in terms of what people plan on doing with those savings. And roughly speaking, they plan on spending about a third of those extra savings. I personally think that's probably an underestimate, and that it's going to end up being even higher than that. But even a third of that is over $70 billion, which is quite a chunk, and can really supercharge growth all on its own, even if people do not tap into this buildup in the broader wealth numbers that I've pointed to.
Okay. A lot of economists were wondering about household debt. We have, there's been concern about the levels of household debt for a long time, in particular, mortgage debt, because of bidding wars and the rising costs of housing. I'm wondering the appreciation in the value of these financial assets and real assets, whether that alleviates some of the concern about the level of household debt. What do you say?
Ever so slightly, but of course there is the very real possibility that at some point we could have a correction in the real estate market, and at least the assets on that side could change very abruptly. I'm not saying we're going to have a repeat of what we saw in the U.S. from in the middle of the last decade, but we certainly can't rule out that possibility. But I think overall, before we went into the pandemic, household debt was widely seen as the number one risk or the number one vulnerability to the Canadian economy. I think when we're on the other side of the pandemic, it's going to reemerge as the number one concern for policymakers. But I do think we'll come out of this with a little less of a pressing concern on that front, because as a share of income, debt actually has come down through the pandemic. Even with the increase in mortgage borrowing that we've seen, on the flip side, we've actually seen a decline in other forms of debt, like credit card debt and that sort of thing.
You're right. In conclusion, the average household has now more than $1 million in total assets. $1 million in total assets, and is nearly there even after netting out debt. So are we all millionaires?
I was tempted to say that, but of course, if you're a homeowner in Toronto, by definition, you're a millionaire according to that metric. So it's got a bit of, the tire's been pumped, no question, by the rise in home prices. It's meant to be as a bit of an eye catcher, but I think the bigger story is, again, about half of that wealth is held in financial assets across the country, and so that does mean that the average household, and I know averages hide as much as they tell, but the average household has about $500,000 in financial assets at this point. Now, again, that includes pension funds.
Includes pension funds, yeah. But, it comes back to these kind of very basic questions about economics. Why doesn't the government just give everybody $1 million? Well, it would be very inflationary. If this is the state of assets and even, say, household worth after debt is taken out of the equation, what does this say about the current inflationary environment there? It sounds like we're just setting ourselves up for rip-roaring time with inflation.
I am sympathetic to those who are concerned about the upside risk on inflation. In other words, our forecast is that we expect inflation to be a bit more of an issue and to linger a bit longer than, say, the Bank of Canada or the Federal Reserve or even the consensus forecasts out there. I do ultimately think that inflation will ease back as things eventually normalize and things reopen again and some of these supply bottlenecks work their way out of the system. Keep in mind, we were around the globe, we were struggling with overly low inflation before the pandemic, and ultimately those forces could reemerge. But I think in the meantime, I think we are going to be dealing with a bit more of an inflation episode than is widely appreciated.
Thank you, Doug Border. Great to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Anytime.
Chief Economist at BMO Capital Markets. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Weekdays at 9 on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Call the Rogers TV Viewer Response Line.